We find ourselves in a mysterious place located near the city of Philo, which is called the Forest of the Lost. One of the travelers who found himself in this place was very frightened by the creatures that lived here. At the same time, he is very surprised that monsters appear in this place, since these paths were previously safe. However, now a small group of goblins armed with some very serious weapons stands in his way. One of them makes a quick dash towards his victim, realizes that there is no way she can escape, and raises her sword. The fate of this unfortunate traveler is sealed, and now he is forced to leave his mortal body in this place. Meanwhile, we are transported to another part of this forest, over which hangs a giant moon, illuminating the path in the night. The second group of travelers continues to go deeper into this forest, saying that they are almost reaching the right place. One of the warriors says that a local small town is posting a quest for the complete destruction of goblins. Along with two warriors, a sorceress named Katarina comes here to practice. After some time, they hear a strange sound that is very reminiscent of some mysterious melody. Katarina turns around and sees a mysterious silhouette slowly approaching them, humming something under its breath. After some time, this figure stops right in front of them and looks at them carefully with genuine interest. A young man with long white hair is surprised that someone is going much deeper into the forest than he is. The soldiers ask him what a civilian is doing here and warn him that it is very dangerous here. The young man says that he takes an order from a local settlement and comes here to kill the goblins that live here. The warriors talk to each other and say that this man does not look like someone who is capable of fighting monsters. One of them approaches him with a special device and asks him to relax, stating that it is just a strength meter. However, after a few moments, the sensors show that this person's strength indicator is at absolute 0. The warriors say that the local monsters are not very strong, but with such indicators, it is impossible to fight against them. The young man says that he does not understand what kind of mental power is being talked about, since he never uses it, but at the same time he kills monsters. The soldiers start laughing at him and say that this guy is a great joker if he doesn't know what mental strength is. Katarina comes closer to him and says that mental strength is an ability that allows one to fight monsters. She claims that over the course of thousands of years, mental strength has been awakening in people so that they can resist evil monsters. He states that depending on the amount of strength, people are classified into ranks S, A, B, C, D, and E for more convenient designation. The warrior says that Lady Katarina was able to rise to D rank at a young age, which is why she is capable of killing monsters. The young man turns around abruptly and walks away quickly, saying that he refuses to leave this place. The warriors look at him with irritation and ask why he does not act according to safety rules, but he ignores them. Katarina says that they are wasting their time, and if this person wants to go to these places, he is free to do whatever he wants. She also says that the monsters here are quite weak, so even a person with absolutely 0 mental strength will not be lost here. After this, they go deeper and deeper in an attempt to find monsters and quite quickly come across a small detachment of goblins. Warriors armed with sharp swords easily destroy weak goblins, gradually reducing their numbers. For more or less trained soldiers, such battles are not a serious test, and they try to complete the task faster. Katarina, in turn, decides to use the magic of the water spirits and tries to call upon them to help her. With little effort, she manages to create a great whirlpool, which attracts a large number of goblins. After some time, they are able to easily destroy most of the cluster of these goblins. The warriors say that there is no point in digging through the goblins' remains, as they are ready to take on the dirty work themselves. The same young man passes by them again and notes that these two warriors literally idolize this sorceress. He also advises them not to let their guard down, as these are only first-tier monsters, and even more dangerous enemies await them ahead. He points them to the forest in front of them, through which fragments of a large structure can be seen. Now only ruins remain of this structure, but this does not mean that they are uninhabited, and there are still many dangers here. The squad follows him, and the young man warns that this place has a very heavy atmosphere, which means that there is someone truly scary here. Katerina supports his idea and says that it is too early to relax since this place is different from the usual forest edge. Strange birds with red eyes constantly gather around, and this hints that someone very powerful lives here. The atmosphere becomes thicker and heavier as they go deeper. Finally, they begin to hear the strange breathing of some giant creature, which, however, behaves quietly. Katerina moves forward cautiously, trying to figure out what creature this very threatening aura belongs to. After a while, she stops and realizes that they need to move as carefully as possible so as not to attract attention. Her eyes reflect true fear and anxiety, as this creature is truly very large. She turns to the rest of her comrades and quietly asks them what it is, while examining the silhouette. The creature before her resembles a giant goblin wearing all the trappings that signal that he is a king. Everyone else turns sharply towards this creature and freezes so as not to wake it up prematurely. Katerina says that the creature is not moving, but her intuition tells her that something is wrong here. Suddenly, one of the warriors starts walking towards this sleeping giant, ignoring the warning of danger. The warrior looks closely at this creature, thinking that for some reason this monster seems familiar to him. After this, he pokes him with his finger several times, but absolutely nothing follows from the giant monster. Because of this, the warrior concludes that this is just some kind of trick or illusion that cannot cause them any harm. He turns around and tells Katerina that it's just a corpse, which means that this time everything is going smoothly and there's nothing to be afraid of. However, at that very moment, the giant goblin begins to come to his senses and his eyes light up with bright lights. The white-haired youth notices these changes in the giant monster's behavior and warns the warrior to be careful. The very next second, this monster delivers a powerful blow with an axe, which cuts off the arm of the slow-witted warrior. Feeling incredible pain, he immediately grabs the place where his limb had just been and begins to scream loudly. After this, he takes a few steps away from his opponent and turns right at him with fear. He wonders if this creature is really alive and has been pretending to be asleep all this time. Meanwhile, the third-rank monster called the Goblin Chieftain rises to its feet and prepares to kill everyone. It also produces a loud scream to instill terror in its potential victims and make them defenseless. This scream is so loud that it causes both warriors to freeze in place in horror and lose their fighting ability. After this, they fall to the ground and Katerina tries to help them, but they are unable to regain consciousness anytime soon. Katerina asks her comrade not to take any action so as not to risk his life, since she will help him. She reflects on the fact that this monster is quite strong, so this factor cannot be neglected and the strongest skill must be used immediately. After this, she decides to charge her staff, saying that it will release the divine power of water and drive out evil spirits. At that very moment, a giant, crazy water shark appears out of nowhere and rushes towards its new victim. However, despite this, the monster repels this attack with surprising ease, and not a single scratch remains on him. Katerina wonders how this is even possible and realizes that this monster is at least on the 3rd level. She tries to figure out what to do in this situation, but the monster wastes no time and immediately prepares to counterattack. Katerina tries to create a special water barrier in order to protect herself and the person behind her. However, it turns out that this water barrier is not as strong as she thought, so the impact that falls on her is significant. Katerina falls to the ground and says that she manages to cast protective spells on herself, but even so, she takes a lot of damage. She remembers that the assignment contains information that only 1st-rank monsters should be here. She also looks at the 2 knights who are already unconscious, meaning their expedition is doomed to failure. Looking at this monster, she wonders if she is really destined to die here, in this god-forsaken place. Finally, she reflects on how, because of her, that guy, who is obviously an ordinary person without abilities, also gets into trouble. However, there is no time to think about this for long, since the monster is already delivering a powerful blow with its sword. Katerina closes her eyes, realizing that she definitely won't be able to dodge this blow, and tries to accept her fate with dignity. 1 second passes and then a few more, but Katerina still doesn't feel any changes in her body. She carefully opens her eyes and wonders if she can possibly survive such a monstrous blow. However, an incredibly amazing sight appears before her, which makes her freeze and lose the power of speech. That same ordinary guy, who seems like a simple person to her, turns out to be able to stop that blow with one hand. The monster tries to make even more efforts to break through this defense, but it is not successful. Meanwhile, the young man looks closely at his opponent and looks away with a bored expression, realizing that this is too easy. Katerina can't believe that this man is saving her and is able to repel such a powerful attack from a third-rank monster with one hand. Meanwhile, the young man asks Katerina if she can move, and she immediately replies that she is fine. He politely asks her to step aside, adding that otherwise he might accidentally touch her, which he would like to avoid. Katerina stands still for a second and a half, after which she says that this does not cause her any problems. Hiding behind the trees, she asks him if she's gone far enough, and he states that it's the perfect distance. Immediately after this, he turns his gaze to the giant monster, who politely decides to wait until they finish their conversation. He asks the monster if he has ever seen lightning, but the monster does not understand human language and does not answer. The young man immediately decides to demonstrate what he has said in practice and begins charging his blade with electricity. The monster also begins to feel as if it is going to rain and quickly lifts its head up to look at the sky. Leaden clouds are already forming above it, which are capable of causing enormous amounts of damage with an electrical charge. Gradually, the energy contained in these clouds begins to collide with each other and form those very lightning bolts. The young man decides to use the thunder attraction skill, which is a different type of interaction with nature. His magic works on different principles, and for people who have mental power, it seems completely unfamiliar. Meanwhile, lightning hits the giant monster directly and begins to deal monstrous amounts of damage to it. Katerina assumes that this man has been hiding the fact that he is a high-ranking thunder and lightning mage all this time. Gradually, the storm clouds disperse in different directions, after which they dissolve into the air as if they had never been there. The young man turns to Katerina and tells her that he is finishing and she can go out. Katerina looks around cautiously and realizes that this young man can really handle such a gigantic monster. She reflects on how a single clap of thunder and lightning is enough to instantly kill a third-rank monster. She also understands that this magic is truly amazing, and she never meets such talented magicians even in the city. She remembers her father telling her that strong people can deliberately hide their true skills. Looking at this young man, she suggests that perhaps he is just the kind of person who uses the element of surprise. After some time, the sun rises over this place, marking the beginning of a new day. The knights come to their senses and, bandaging their wounds, say that this guy really kills a third-rank monster. Katerina tells them that there is no need to be so skeptical, since he is saving their lives. She also says that this man is their savior and they are forever indebted to him for his help. She also looks at this man who decides to leave and adds that she herself has no real idea why he is doing this. However, she adds that he is certainly a very strong fighter who is capable of reaching incredible heights. Both warriors apologize to him, saying that they told him too much, and then ask him how to divide the spoils. The man immediately says that all the loot that can be obtained from this monster belongs exclusively to him. The warriors ask him if he really leaves them nothing, since they have been working hard the day before and have received serious wounds. He decides to joke and hands them a toenail from a first-rank goblin as loot for this foray. The warriors look at this spoils and say that it is too small a price for the suffering they endure. The young man claims that he heals their wounds with his best medicine and does not even ask for money for it, so it is a fair payment. After a long period of meditation, this mysterious man takes the monster's body with him, stuffing it into a giant sack. Holding the bag in his hands, he says that the spoils are divided as fairly as possible, and if no one objects, then he leaves. Katerina asks him if he is already planning to leave them, to which he states that he still needs to go to the village for a reward. Katerina looks at him with undisguised sadness because this man definitely interests her lonely heart. One of the warriors says that this man is too stingy, but the second comrade stops him. He states that last night he couldn't shake the thought that this monster looked familiar, and it turns out that it is a famous monster. He adds that the Witcher Association is offering a very good cash reward for the body of this goblin. He adds that they just need to deliver his body to the city, and there they can exchange it for even more money. The young man stops and asks them what they just said, using his incredible hearing. His eyes begin to sparkle, and then he realizes that this monster can be worth a lot of money. After this, we are transported directly to the city of Furno, which has enough residents to allow large-scale trade to flourish. The protagonist reaches the office of the Witcher Association and receives a substantial reward for his loot. An association employee hands him a chest tightly packed with various precious stones and asks him to take it. The young man realizes that these spiritual stones are absolutely identical to the stones he used before in his world. Looking at the two knights who have been next to him all this time, he sees sadness and sorrow appearing in their eyes. He gives them a small portion of the money he was paid and tells them that they need to go home and lick their wounds. After this, he turns around and says that they are even, which means it is time to say goodbye. Katerina immediately grabs his hand, saying that she doesn't want to let him go right now and asks him to pay her a little attention. The protagonist turns around in her direction in surprise to find out why she suddenly wanted to speak. Katerina, feeling incredibly embarrassed, says that she would like to know his name if he doesn't mind telling her about it. Our hero pauses briefly, then with a simple smile says that his name is Chester. After this, we are transported to the inn of this city where ordinary people come to rent a room for the night. Chester goes into a special bath to refresh his body after a hard day and long physical exertion. He looks at the strange talisman and says that this thing hangs around the Goblin Chief's neck and is experiencing a powerful lightning strike. He notes that there is a faint spiritual energy of the immortal world emanating from it and that this thing must be very valuable. After this, he decides that he still needs to keep this thing, hangs it around his neck, and after a while, decides to take a little nap. However, gradually this thing begins to glow and fill with a large amount of energy. Its radiance grows brighter and brighter with each passing minute, as if it were some kind of instrument that needed to be charged. Once the charge reaches its maximum, a bright flash occurs, after which a strange silhouette appears in the water. This silhouette belongs to a beautiful woman who quickly rises to her feet and looks around carefully. This nine-tailed fox werewolf named Betty happily talks about being trapped here for 5,000 years. She also decides to look at the person who wakes her up, and lights immediately light up in her eyes. Chester continues to doze all this time, completely oblivious to the fact that another entity appears here. Betty comes closer to him and says that an incredible amount of spiritual energy is emanating from him. She reflects on how incredibly lucky she is and so decides to try some of this energy. The spiritual werefoxes have a very specific feeding method, so she decides to simply kiss him on the lips. Betty reflects on how this is an amazing feeling, the likes of which she has not experienced for a very long time. Pulling back slightly, she reflects on how it feels like her body is being filled with spiritual energy. Chester suddenly opens his eyes and asks her who she is and how she gets into his bathhouse. Betty jumps back sharply and asks herself in fear if he really woke up so quietly that she didn't feel it. After this, she talks about how it is she who makes her wake up and asks if he really doesn't remember anything at all. Chester looks at her closely and asks if she is the fox engraved on the pendant. Betty, meanwhile, also decides to take a good look at the man who saves her from this eternal captivity. She notes that this man is incredibly handsome and mentally decides that she needs to test his strength. Immediately after this, she casts a quick spell and exhales a small mist that quickly spreads throughout the room. Chester looks at her in surprise and asks what she was planning and why she decided to use a spell on him. After a few moments, he feels the space in front of him begin to distort, after which it returns to normal. Two girls immediately appear in front of him and ask him why the gentleman is taking a bath alone. One of them immediately approaches him and says that they can help him and relieve his boredom with their techniques. They also praise his incredible muscles, saying that he looks like a real hero from their favorite novels. Another girl says that his body is getting hotter by the second and asks him not to worry. Betty, meanwhile, continues to watch closely what is happening in the hope that her illusions will work. She reflects that if this man cannot resist her art, then she does not know who else can help. Chester, meanwhile, turns his gaze exclusively to her, thereby making it clear that this does not work on him. Betty is very surprised by this, not even believing that she has found a person who turns out to be impenetrable. Chester, meanwhile, looks at her and out of interest asks why all these tricks are needed. There's an awkward pause between them, and only now does Betty realize that Chester is rising from the water and revealing himself fully. She wonders what this blinding radiance is that prevents her from thinking clearly and speaking normally. Chester also understands that something is wrong here and says that he feels as if nothing is bothering him at all. Looking down, he realizes that he has completely forgotten that he is not taking any special underwear with him since he is not expecting guests. After a while, he quickly decides to change clothes in order to ask his unexpected guest where she comes from. Chester suggests that she must be the spirit of the artifact, and Betty admits that she is a werefox. She claims that after thousands of years of practice, she manages to take on human form, but demonic energy puts her to sleep. She admits that she thinks she will sleep forever, but she cannot believe that she will ever meet such a strong person. She also states that she is testing his strength and asks him if he is a cultivator. Chester looks at her with a smile as she becomes the first being to recognize his profession and says that it is true. Betty says, thoughtfully, that according to her latest information, there shouldn't be a single cultivator left in this world. She adds that 5,000 years ago, a great battle took place between the world of immortals and the world of demons. She also states that at the end of this battle, all cultivator clans will be destroyed and slaughtered. She also states that because of this, the largest sects are destroyed and the history of cultivators is forgotten. However, at the same time, other races are also developing as demonic energy begins to slowly transform the world. Among these races are the snake people, who live far from these places but are distinguished by their calm and territorial nature. There are also elves in this world who live deep in the forests and try to be one with the nature that gives birth to them. In this demonic world, of course, succubi also exist, as they are the closest hybrids between demons and humans. Betty says that she has been feeling the presence of these races all this time, but has never felt the cultivator. She asks him how he manages to survive and appear here again after thousands of years. Chester says that, unfortunately, he cannot give her a clear answer to this question, since he remembers very little. Betty says that there is no need to worry about it, since the memories will probably come back to him over time. Chester also remembers the technique she just used on him and realizes that she is trying to gauge his strength. Betty says that she cannot develop her abilities on her own without the help of a cultivator, but this is not a problem. She also states that in this world full of demonic energy, without the help of people like him, she won't be able to survive for long. Betty claims to sense his powerful spiritual energy and asks for permission to follow him. Betty adds that she has a highly developed sense of smell and can sense the ancient artifacts he is looking for. Chester agrees almost immediately, saying that from this day on, they will travel the world together. Betty is very surprised that he gives his consent so quickly and does not even waste a second to think. She asks him if he doesn't want to ask for anything in return, because that would be too dishonest on her part. Chester says that it costs him nothing to share spiritual energy since he already has a lot of it. He also reminds her that she promised to help him search for ancient artifacts, and that's all he needs now. After they finish their acquaintance, they decide to wait until the next day to go searching. Betty repeats his name again and asks if she is remembering it correctly, and Chester says that she is learning his name perfectly. Betty thinks about it and says that the name sounds very familiar, as if she has heard it many times before. A few moments later, she suddenly jerks sharply, as if she senses the presence of something incredible. Chester asks her what's going on, and she states that she senses a very powerful artifact in a certain direction. Chester immediately rushes there, saying that this is simply wonderful news and is going to check out what is there. They quickly reach one of the squares in the city of Furno, which at that moment turns out to be simply overflowing with townspeople. Betty notes this fact and suggests that there must be some kind of celebration going on here since so many people come here. She also states that she can feel the artifact's aura, which is only getting stronger, and Chester says that there is no point in lingering. After this, they walk forward without pushing anyone aside or stepping on anyone's feet, which turns out to be no easy task. The artifact they've been searching for all this time turns out to be guarded by two calm guards on honor guard duty. Chester notices the blade, which is stuck into the stone, and realizes that the fox is probably talking about it. One of the guards says that, in accordance with ancient customs, a test of the brave will be held in a few days. Betty decides to find out more about this artifact, and the old man tells her that in his entire life, no one has been able to get it out of there. He claims that this sacred blade has been preserved since ancient times, has a centuries-old history, and always ends up stuck in a stone. He states that, according to legend, only the worthy can obtain this blade, but for thousands of years no one has been able to do so. Betty, meanwhile, notices Chester's unusual interest and asks him what's going on. Chester looks closely at this blade and says that he has seen it before, but this happened a very, very long time ago. Lost in his memories, he recalls that the blade felt like a feather in his hand, but at the same time, it was incredibly sharp. This blade is called the greatest treasure, and if enlightened, it can be turned into a spirit guardian. He also remembers how the sages gave him this blade, saying that he was the only one worthy of wielding this weapon. Chester is blunt about how the blade has always been his, and he doesn't expect to see it again after that epic battle. Betty asks him in surprise if this is really true, and Chester says that he even remembers what the sword is called. After a dramatic pause, he says that this sword is called the Soaring Dragon, and that it was he who came up with this name. After this, he takes a few steps towards this monument in order to quickly extract the sword from the stone and get his artifact. However, his path is blocked by two guards who immediately draw their swords and block his passage. They say that this is the sacred sword of the city and no civilian is allowed to approach it. Betty says that they themselves say that a brave man must appear who can pull out this sword. The guards start laughing and say that no one has succeeded in this for thousands of years, and Chester definitely won't be able to get it. They also say that if this person wants to try, then he must first pass the test of the brave. One of them asks what family they are from, adding that unless they are aristocrats, they cannot be let through. Chester says that he may not be a member of one of the 4 great families, but that doesn't change anything. The warriors take a fighting stance and say that in this case, they will be forced to force him to leave this place. Katerina suddenly appears before them and orders them to stop this farce immediately before they incur her wrath. She states that this man is an honored guest of the Steve family, so such treatment of him is unacceptable. The guards immediately look at her with fear and say that they do not know that this man is her guest. Meanwhile, ordinary townspeople are wondering how this uncouth man managed to meet the Steve family. Katerina shyly looks away and asks him if he really wants to try to get this sword. Chester immediately begins to complain about the guards, saying that he wants to get the sword, but these people will not let him. Katerina says that, according to the rules, only those who pass the test of courage can try to get it. Betty says that there is no need to rush, since no one else can pull out this sword. Katerina, meanwhile, declares that as a member of one of the great families, she can sign a recommendation for him. Chester immediately asks her how much he should pay for this recommendation, and she states that it is free. Chester immediately points his hand at Betty and says that she should also get a recommendation since she is his ally. Katerina thinks that this girl is very beautiful and dresses similarly to Chester. A few days later, we find ourselves in the Valley of Ghosts, which is located on the outskirts of this city. Chester talks about feeling concentrated demonic energy everywhere, and he finds it very interesting. Along with him and Betty, a huge number of others also arrive here to try their luck. This challenge has a host who announces that all the participants have arrived, and she must explain the rules. Chester notices that Katerina's there while the main presenter talks about getting 3 devil cores. This girl's name is Mel, and she claims that the devil core is the greatest treasure of demonic entities. She also notes that whoever returns with the reward tomorrow becomes the winner and gets the right to pull the sword from the stone. The people here are talking about hunting third-rank monsters, which is too dangerous for their lives. A few moments later, a proud warrior named Carl says that this task turns out to be too easy for him. Immediately after this, another person appears next to him who advises him not to become arrogant ahead of time. His name is Melvin, and this knight says that if the test were that simple, more people would take part in it. Other warriors say that Carl and Melvin are the most promising candidates, even though they are enemies. They also realize that these two can be called true geniuses, and wonder who is stronger. Melvin is overjoyed to be recognized as the strongest newcomer, and Carl is too far behind him. Melvin is thinking about how this scoundrel is his main competitor, but he shouldn't relax. He turns around and reflects on how only the one who returns here alive can be called the true winner. Chester feels that this man has a very heavy aura and assumes that this is who Katerina is telling him about. Some time ago, she tells him that the Onassis family doesn't like them, so it's better not to cross paths with them. Carl, meanwhile, sets his sights on Chester, realizing that the man is nothing special as a warrior. He muses that Steve's family must really be crazy to send this guy on a test. He reflects on the fact that this time, the whole city is talking only about him, and there is no need to worry about the rest. Meanwhile, Mel loudly announces that the test can finally begin, thus giving a start to the other warriors. The fighters immediately rush forward to the Valley of Ghosts in order to find the required number of cores. Carl races ahead, faster than anyone else, in order to get there first. But this test turns out to be much more difficult than it seems. Chester stops after a while, feeling that something is clearly wrong here, and decides to think for a bit. The thing is that there are several forks here, which makes finding the cores a much more difficult task. Carl also senses concentrated demonic energy oozing from one of the passages and decides to go there. Melvin also analyzes this fork and decides that he needs to choose the other way out, since success awaits him there. Ordinary people say that the first entrance is completely covered with thorns, so it will be difficult to walk, but they will also encounter few monsters. Meanwhile, Mel asks Katerina how she can give a recommendation to a person who does not have mental strength. She adds that for an ordinary person, going to this valley is a death sentence, and Katerina says that she is simply fulfilling his wish. She also states that Chester is no ordinary person and has incredible strength that will allow him to pass this test. She also states that this man is the most reliable of all those she has ever met, and Mel is very surprised by this. Betty says there are a lot of forks in the road and is trying to figure out which path to take, while Chester asks for a little time to think. After a while, he puts a branch on the ground and says that they will go where this branch falls. Betty asks him what the point of this method is, and Chester states that, so far, this method has not failed him. After some time, the branch falls onto the most intense path, from which an incredibly heavy aura emanates. Betty shudders at the goosebumps that immediately run across her skin, and she realizes that this looks quite creepy and unpleasant. Gradually, they go deeper into the depths of this dark forest and feel that someone is watching them closely and gradually creeping up on them. Betty asks Chester if he hears anything, to which he quickly denies, but Betty is not reassured. She says that her sixth sense tells her that something very scary lives here, and it makes her body go numb. Chester says he still can't hear anything, and Betty turns around sharply, hearing strange sounds that resemble footsteps. There is nothing there, so she decides to turn her head a little more to find out what it was. Quite quickly, they discover that in front of them is the silhouette of a girl who seems to be floating in the air. This girl slowly floats forward without touching the ground with her feet and continues to make strange, ominous howls. The fact that these howls echo for many kilometers makes the atmosphere so ominous. Chester and Betty watch the figure closely for a while and realize that it is probably one of the ghosts. Chester calmly moves forward, and Betty tries to warn him, saying that there is no one friendly in this valley of ghosts. Chester says that this is some kind of nonsense, since it is definitely not a ghost, but just a lost girl. He puts his hand on her shoulder and asks if she needs help, hoping that she will answer his call and show him the way. However, instead, the creature begins to slowly turn its head towards him, continuing to make strange howls. Her face appears to be human, but it is terribly distorted by an otherworldly force. Chester looks at this face in surprise for a while and realizes that most likely this girl will not be able to tell him the way. Immediately after this, he decides to strike a powerful blow in order to free this creature from the shackles of unnatural life. After this, the monster falls to the ground, and its body becomes much more tangible, as if returning to the real world. Chester says that Betty is right, and this monster really is a ghost. Chester suddenly says that this ghost looks pretty good, so it would be great to take off her clothes. Betty is surprised by such a strange decision and tries to figure out what the logic behind such an action is. Taking a closer look, she realizes that this ghost's clothes look quite rich and high quality. Betty briefly considers why she needs to take off her clothes, but Chester declares that he already figures it all out. He explains his decision by saying that the dress is made of silk, and if the fabric is of good quality, it can be sold. After this, they decide to go further in order to meet even more ghosts in the hope of rich trophies. They track these ghosts with a distinctive howl and slowly creep up on them so as not to attract attention. Only when it becomes obvious that the ghost has nowhere to run, Chester decides to quickly approach it in order to catch it. His incredible and terrifying appearance instills a lot of fear in these ghosts, even though they themselves are creatures from another world. This evening becomes a real nightmare for the ghosts of this valley, but brings a considerable amount of wealth to Chester and Betty. Meanwhile, other warriors pass through this forest and wonder why this place has such a creepy name. They add that all this time they have been hearing about ghosts living here, but so far they have not come across any of them. Some of them say that this test is a walk in the park, but this attitude does not lead to anything good. A few moments later, a small earthquake begins right in front of them, and creatures begin to emerge from the ground. These creatures turn out to be the living dead, who were once thrown into this cursed land a long time ago. Over the years, quite a few laughing carpets have died here, but now they have a new purpose in the afterlife. The warriors guess that these creatures are hiding underground to avoid the thorns, and they realize that there are quite a lot of them. After a while, one of these dead creatures jumps forward, simultaneously ordering other monsters to surround their victims. A real massacre begins in which hardly anyone can remain alive due to the numerical superiority of the monsters. Meanwhile, we are transported to a quieter section of the haunted forest, which is already being cleared of most of its inhabitants. Chester continues walking through the forest, humming a song and dreaming of finding even greater riches. Betty reflects that this man turns out to be a little greedy and spontaneous in his actions, but she feels calmer around him. She emphasizes that even in this frightening forest, she feels much more confident, and this is already a good sign. After some time, another fluttering silhouette appears in front of them, which belongs to another ghost. This monster turns out to be a ghost servant who says that she hasn't met people who are capable of coming here for a long time. After that, she says that they look incredibly delicious and she will hardly be able to restrain herself after devouring them. Chester sees before him not another monster, but an opportunity to fill his bag with a large number of inexpensive clothes. He says that he can't guarantee that she will stay fed, but he definitely plans to take her clothes. The ghost servant does not expect such a mood from the traveler, who should be frightened just by seeing her. However, it is precisely this spontaneous behavior that arouses her even greater interest, because she has not yet met such people. She asks him what these ambiguous words about him going to take all her clothes mean. Chester says there is no hidden agenda here, and he is simply going to take her clothes for himself while they are still in good condition. The ghost servant becomes angry and asks him how a pathetic little man dares to talk to her like that. After this, she flies into the air and uses a special rune, saying that he himself asked for serious trouble. She summons a large number of bats, telling them to tear him into small pieces. Chester looks at her with a smile and says that a pathetic flock of bats is completely incapable of such a thing. Before he can deal with these monsters on his own, a bright flame appears next to him. This flame quickly rushes forward and destroys a gigantic number of bats, not giving them a single chance of victory. The ghost servant angrily says that the cursed witch burns all the scarlet babies in the blink of an eye. Betty says that she has been sleeping for many thousands of years, but this does not mean that she's forgotten how to use magic. Chester says it's a pretty impressive display of power, while Betty says it's just child's play. Chester suggests that he might give her the loot, but Betty replies that he might accidentally burn her clothes, making it difficult to sell them. The ghost servant begins to get angry, not believing that these two scoundrels dare to ignore her presence because she is a terrible monster. Chester realizes that Betty is actually making a valid point about dealing with this monster himself. After this, he jumps forward and says that if Betty gives him the prey, then he is not going to stand on ceremony with this monster. Immediately after this, he suddenly stretches out his hand forward, and the ghost servant assumes that he is trying to molest her. Such things would be considered extremely indecent and shameful for any monster, even if the woman were a ghost. Immediately after this, she jumps to the side, not having time to let the protagonist's hand touch her body. She asks him what kind of nonsense he is doing and why he is trying to grope her, since she is a ghost and not a person. Chester says that there is a misunderstanding, since he only wants the dress, since it can be sold at a high price. Immediately after this, he makes a dash, saying that the dress needs to be taken while it remains intact. After a few moments, he decides to use a martial arts technique called indestructibility. Immediately after this, he delivers powerful blows, which, however, are soft enough not to tear the fabric. Betty is amazed at the incredible speed of these blows, which she doesn't even have time to follow. The ghost servant begs for mercy, hoping that this terrible torture is finally ending and she will be able to return to the afterlife. After a few moments, she disappears completely, and the dress that she had been wearing all this time remains safe and sound. A strange diamond also begins to hang in the air, which is the concentration of the spiritual power of such a monster. Betty says that this is the devil's core, the presence of which is the main condition for passing the test. Betty says that now that they have fulfilled the conditions, they need to go back and try to pull out the sword, but Chester is in no hurry. He claims that there are many more monsters to be found here, and he is not going to miss any of them in order to get more money. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Valley of Ghosts, a real fierce battle is unfolding. Melvin will be able to defeat the giant monster, inside of which is a demonic core of the required rank. He is already beginning to celebrate his victory, saying that this is exactly what he has been looking for all this time, and emphasizing that everything turns out to be easy. Carl suddenly appears behind him, saying that he doesn't expect Chester to be able to defeat a rank 3 monster. Melvin quickly turns around, and Carl says that he is just lucky to survive this fight. Melvin asks him if he has been following him all this time in order to take his treasures and simply finish him off. Carl calmly shows the cannonballs he holds in his hands and says that he has no need to rob him. Melvin immediately realizes what he is really after and prepares for a fierce battle. He turns towards him and says that now it becomes clear to him that Carl comes here only to kill him. Carl, in turn, grins, realizing that, despite the fact that his plan has just been revealed, it no longer changes anything. Melvin asks him if he is strong enough to handle it, and Carl states that he won't know until he tries. Melvin decides to attack first, taking advantage of the fact that Carl is clearly faster than him due to the fact that he is wearing lighter armor. That is why he decides to make a swift dash forward in order to gain the initiative and set the pace of the battle himself. He delivers a powerful, sweeping blow and says that this will be enough to end his miserable life. Carl counters by calling him a pathetic, reckless idiot who is getting himself into the grave with such maneuvers. He easily manages to parry this blow and seize the initiative in this difficult fight for a while. An incredibly fierce battle breaks out, but neither of them can gain the upper hand due to a slight difference in skill. Melvin notes that Carl is able to fight him on equal terms, which turns out to be unexpected as he becomes much stronger. Melvin also emphasizes that their powers are of the same rank, so they will not be able to deal with each other without outside help. Carl grins and asks him if he really thinks he's coming here alone. At that very second, the air begins to tremble as a small dart cuts through it at incredible speed. Melvin doesn't have time to react to such a vile attack, and a dart from behind immediately hits him in the neck. Melvin feels a lot of pain and realizes that it's all over because the arrow is laced with a very strong poison. Another man emerges from the thicket and says that the meeting with Melvin is incredibly unexpected. This man turns out to be John Walton, who says that he needs a strong ally to get the core. Melvin drops to one knee and tells them that they will face real hellish revenge for insulting his family. Carl takes a few steps towards him and immediately puts a knife to his neck, his face breaking into a creepy smile. He states that everything that happens in the Valley of Ghosts remains forever only in this Valley of Ghosts. At that very second, he delivers a powerful blow in order to finish off his opponent, who is already very weakened. Looking at his body, he says that this scoundrel has been putting spokes in his wheels for a long time, but in the end, he dies from his blade. John Walton comes closer to him and asks him if he can get his hands on the loot that Melvin is leaving behind. Carl says with a smile that he has already said that everything that happens in this place will forever remain only in this place. John looks at him in surprise and asks if he means that he is going to remove the witness of his actions. Carl immediately delivers another powerful blow to finish off this pathetic weakling. Carl says that he can't leave a guy alive who could give him away at any moment because he's already killing a competitor. However, after a few moments, he feels an incredible amount of force moving towards him. He falls to the ground as if he is pinned there by incredible pressure and cannot move. Carl is trying to understand what this concentrated demonic energy is because the aura of those monsters cannot be compared to it. Gradually, he turns around to find out what is going on here, but receives no answer. Meanwhile, this pressure spreads over a great distance and even reaches the end of the Ghost Gorge. Katarina says that something unexpected is happening, and Mel claims that some other monster is entering the area for testing. She also adds that this energy is extremely powerful and belongs to at least a 4th rank monster. She adds that in order to defeat a monster of such rank, the strength of 3 specialists is needed, which means the test must be stopped. Katarina immediately thinks about Chester, hoping that he will be okay and will be able to avoid facing this monster. The monster that has such a profound effect on her turns out to be a giant gargoyle sitting on a column. This energy actually comes from a 4th rank monster, and it has a powerful diamond embedded within it that is filled with demonic energy. Chester and Betty accidentally spot him, and Betty suggests they step aside, but Chester immediately refuses. He explains his behavior by saying that he promises to kill all the monsters, which means he will have to finish this one off too. The gargoyle looks at them in surprise, wondering why these people don't start running when they feel her pressure. She suggests that their mental strength is so weak that they cannot sense her terrifying aura. Betty turns sharply towards Chester and realizes that such things have no effect on him at all. All his attention is focused on the large, shiny stone that is located near the gargoyle and is probably worth a lot of money. Chester says that no normal person would run away when there was a bag of money right in front of him. The gargoyle looks at him in surprise and wonders what he means when he calls her a money bag. Chester almost instantly takes to the air to take back what is rightfully his by incredible power. He delivers a powerful attack, saying that it will now belong to him, but the gem remains in place. The same cannot be said for the gargoyle, which receives such a powerful charge of kinetic energy that it is thrown aside. She falls to the ground and begins to dig a large tunnel with her own body, hundreds of meters long. The demonic monster doesn't understand how a person who doesn't have any mental strength can deliver such a powerful blow. Gargoyle suggests that this man decides to compensate for his lack of mental strength with physical training. Chester reaches his target and says that he is surprised that the gargoyle does not lose consciousness from his blow. The gargoyle, in turn, says that her opponent is too ignorant and arrogant, and she sees right through him. She then uses her ultimate defense form, stating that she will allow him to see her ultimate armor. The monster says that in this state, his entire body is covered with hard granite, which is impossible to penetrate. Chester doesn't hesitate for a second and strikes at the same moment in order not to lose the initiative in this fight. This blow turns out to be powerful enough to crack this seemingly impenetrable defense. The gargoyle muses that he has never seen anyone so strong and that the force of the blow sends him flying even further. Betty quickly gets to Chester and asks if he's okay, to which he replies that his arm is a little numb. Chester also notes that she took his bag, to which the fox states that one should never forget about trophies. After this, she begins to feel a significant increase in the amount of demonic energy in the air and steps back. She understands that this only indicates that the monster has decided to greatly enhance its physical abilities. Betty adds that this energy is moving towards this monster, so it is better to be careful now. Chester says he can handle the threat and asks her to take care of herself and stay away with the spoils. The gargoyle muses that this is the first time he has met someone like this, and that now he can stretch his muscles. The gargoyle adds that he hasn't been in such a good mood for a long time, but that he doesn't understand the consequences beyond that. At the same time, he begins to use his staff to deal powerful blows to the ground and cause changes in the atmosphere. Chester and Betty look in surprise at a small amount of black fog that appears out of nowhere. Chester guesses that the aura of this creature contains a very strong poison, which gradually affects its skin. The gargoyle says that his magic not only restrains the enemy during battle, but can also poison the enemy. At the same time, all participants are immediately recalled due to the interference of a fourth-rank monster in the trials. Mel says that things didn't turn out that badly, as almost all the participants returned safely. Katerina begins to worry, thinking that the two people she worries about most have not yet arrived. Meanwhile, the gargoyle says that his demonic energy has already spread throughout the entire Valley of Ghosts. Chester asks Betty if she was very scared, to which she replies that she doesn't feel afraid when she's around him. Chester smiles and says that this is amazing news, after which he decides to use a special spiritual technique. Betty finds that she is now surrounded by a glowing aura that blocks any manifestation of demonic energy. Chester says that this is his shield of the Golden Pearl and that the dome created by this shield should protect her. Betty asks him why he uses it on her, assuming it is to protect her from the effects of the poison. Chester says his priority is to protect the bag of loot so he can sell it. Betty is surprised that money is so important to this man that he is willing to neglect even his own life. Chester, in turn, speculates that the toxicity of this poison increases over time. The gargoyle suggests that anyone who is unable to protect themselves and tries to save others is acting extremely arrogantly. Chester, meanwhile, decides to put an end to this senseless theater and says that he has already talked enough with this monster. The gargoyle tries to understand why he is waving his arms so actively and begins to mutter strange nonsense under his breath. Betty listens carefully because she has heard this mantra somewhere in the distant past. She remembers that this is the blessing of the 5 lightning bolts and that whoever possesses this knowledge is able to control electricity. Chester continues to concentrate as much as possible on the spiritual energy that passes through his body into the atmosphere. After this, he opens his eyes, which are already beginning to sparkle with incredible lightning energy. After this, he creates a small, wide lightning bolt and calls it a thunderous execution technique that destroys everything. The gargoyle looks at him and tries to understand how a person without mental power can use magic. He finds this amazing and then says that he will now show him what real otherworldly magic looks like. After this, he charges a cloud of demonic energy of decay, putting the maximum amount of his power into it. After this, he sends this cloud towards the main character, hoping that he will simply go to the next world. Chester looks at the approaching projectile and says that he has not seen such ignorance in a long time and that this is not magic. As he fires a ball of lightning forward, he declares that this cultivator technique was lost long ago. This lightning pierces through the demonic sphere in a matter of milliseconds, after which it immediately heads towards the gargoyle. The monster can't believe his sphere of darkness was destroyed so quickly, but it's too late for him. He realizes that he doesn't have time to dodge, and a terrible thought arises in his head that he will most likely lose. He reflects on the fact that he was ordered not to allow anyone to disturb the lady, but he fails to do so. His body disintegrates into tiny pieces, and he reflects on how his mission is not yet complete before disappearing completely. Meanwhile, lightning creates a powerful explosion that spreads for many kilometers in all directions. Betty says that it was indeed a blessing of 5 lightning bolts, and that such a small sphere contained enormous power. Meanwhile, Mel feels that the valley itself is beginning to shake from this incredible explosion. She understands that a 4th-rank monster cannot be responsible for this explosion, as this creature is much stronger. She notes that they need to ask for top-level craftsmen to be sent here to deal with this. That night, a huge part of the Valley of Ghosts is practically wiped off the face of the earth by Chester's skill alone. All that remains of the monster itself is a charred body, which no longer represents anything of value. Chester moves closer to him, hoping that he hasn't overdone it and destroyed the most valuable part he came for. To his great happiness, the very crystal that he wanted to sell for a lot of money remains safe and sound. Betty reminds him that he is still poisoned and asks him how he is feeling, to which he replies that it is nothing. He falls to the ground, saying that he just needs to rest and meditate for a while, and the poison will go away. Betty asks him why he would resort to such a troublesome method that would take him a lot of time. Chester asks her if she knows a better way to remove the poison. Betty immediately throws herself into his arms, realizing that she has an effective way to cure him. Immediately after this, she hugs him, and Chester is surprised that she didn't warn him about this beforehand. In fact, he is so surprised by this behavior that he even falls to the ground, trying to understand what it all means. However, he quickly realizes that she is trying to remove the poison from his body in this way. Over time, he begins to feel much better and notes that it was a great idea on her part. Betty pulls back and exhales tensely, saying that she has cleansed his body of the deadly poison. Chester says he could easily handle this himself, but now he can't save her. Betty says that there is poison in her body, but since his spiritual energy is nourishing her, she will quickly recover. Chester calmly says that if everything is okay, then he won't have any problems, and he is happy for her. Betty asks him if he has heard of the Shuangtuan clan, and Chester immediately states that he has not heard anything like that. Betty says it's no big deal and refuses to explain her question further. On the other side of the Valley of Ghosts, everyone is terrified and awaiting the appearance of this terrible monster, fully armed. Mel muses that she must guard the passage until the highest-ranking mental power masters arrive. She understands that if it costs her life, then she is ready to accept this sacrifice, because they cannot allow the monster to pass. Mel suspects that a monster is approaching and tells everyone to be ready for battle. However, after a few moments, the fog suddenly clears and a very surprising picture appears before them. Chester holds the body of the defeated monster in his hands and wonders why there are so many people here. Betty says that they are not late and notes that they still passed this test and defeated another monster. Mel and the other fighters look at them in surprise and try to understand how an ordinary person with no mental powers could defeat this monster. Mel notes that, judging by the fluctuations in the aura, the monster in the valley was indeed a 4th-rank monster, but the entire explosion remains a mystery. She assumes that this man is hiding his mental power, and it was he who destroyed this monster with one blow. Katerina happily says that she knew they would be able to return safe and sound no matter what. Carl muses that something inexplicable must have happened in the valley, which is why the monster died. Chester throws the monster's body onto the ground so everyone else can look at it and see for themselves. Immediately after this, he steps on it with his foot and says that he would like to sell this monster to the Witchers Guild. Betty also shows off a giant bag of loot, saying there's a lot of interesting stuff here. Mel is amazed and asks if he really wants to sell all this, and states that there is no problem with that if he is concerned about the legal issue. Mel can't believe that a man who defeated a 4th-rank monster is trying to profit from small trophies. Soon after they venture into the depths of the Ghost Valley, an uninvited guest appears who poses an even greater threat. The demoness says that her favorite pet was killed after all, and now she will have to return on her own. She notes that the newcomers from this city are so strong that it irritates her, but suddenly she falls silent. As she descends, she discovers several particles charged with mysterious energy and attracts them to herself. After carefully analyzing them, she says that for some reason, these particles make her feel nostalgic. After thinking for a while, she realized that this was spiritual power, which was a remnant of the battle with the Great Cultivator. Everyone calmed down a bit after the trial of the brave ended, and Chester and Betty quickly sold the monster's corpse and got rich. After that, everyone returned to the Holy Ball Square, which now looks like a pathetic reward for defeating these monsters. Mel says that they had some difficulties during the tests this time, but everything ended well. She also states that overall, the 2 candidates managed to obtain 3rd-rank demonic cores, which is surprising. Carl is annoyed that everyone is only looking at Chester, even though the 4th-rank monster was not part of his plans. Chester, meanwhile, asks him why he's staring at him so hard, adding that it's okay to scratch your ears. Mel concludes that since they have passed the tests, they can now try to get the sword in order of priority. Carl immediately rushes forward and declares that he will be the first to speak, since he can handle it better than anyone else. Without wasting any time, he immediately grabs the sword with both hands and begins to pull it towards himself with all his strength. However, this sword turns out to be too heavy to be pulled out so easily. Carl puts in the maximum effort he can, but it doesn't lead to any results at all. Gradually, his body becomes too weak, and he simply falls to the ground, unable to continue the fight. He reflects on how this sword is simply impossible to pull out, and it seems to be just a sword from a stupid legend. People are starting to say that if Carl didn't succeed, then no one else in this world will have a single chance. Chester says he doesn't care about other people's doubts, because he's just going to get his things back. Carl reflects on how this man acts so confidently, as if he already had the sword in his pocket. Chester jumps onto the pedestal and looks closely at the sword, realizing that he has been without it for too long. After a few moments, it suddenly begins to pulsate, as if some creature had been dormant inside it all this time. The sword begins to speak to him, telling him that he has finally waited for the arrival of his true master. He adds that he spent many years here waiting for his master and asks if he remembers those days. The sword tells that with one phrase, he lured him into the lair of the monsters, where they fought for 3 days and then participated in other massacres. The sword reminds them that they fought side by side, that they were a true family, born in the heat of battle. Chester reflects that he has a bad feeling about this, as if this sword is very worried about its loneliness. After this, he grabs it by the handle and says that loneliness is over and it is time to return home. Immediately after he grabs it, a mysterious aura begins to emanate from the sword, spreading into the air. A small dome is also created which begins to shine as if it were a miniature sun and astonishes the common crowd. Chester, meanwhile, makes a sharp movement and pulls the sword out of the stone, adding that he welcomes his weapon. After looking at it carefully, he also says that this sword is called the Soaring Dragon. People who witnessed this procedure cannot believe that someone pulled out a sword for the first time after 5,000 years. They begin to wonder loudly who he is and how he got so much power. Gradually, the sword's aura begins to change significantly, and a giant creature appears around it. Soaring Dragon says that he's finally freed from that stupid rock and calls Chester baby. He asks him if he remembers him, but falls silent because he is so happy that they met again. Chester says that he doesn't remember absolutely anything that was told to him and doesn't understand what kind of dragon it is. Meanwhile, people cannot believe that the sacred sword has turned into an unprecedented divine being. Soaring Dragon says that surviving that battle and losing your memory is not the worst outcome that could have happened. He also says that this means that even millennia can separate them, but they will always be together. Chester recommends turning it back into a sword, and Soaring Dragon suggests that it is necessary to make it more beautiful. Katerina continues to watch this and thinks that she should be the first to congratulate him on this incredible victory. She also says that she always believed in him, and now he is a well-deserved face of this city. Chester says that he should thank her for recommending him for this test, and Katerina blushes. However, after a few moments, she sees a bright silhouette flash past her, and all she can see is a small tail. Betty throws herself into his arms and tells him that he is definitely not an ordinary person because he was able to master the sword. Katerina and all the other observers watch what is happening because it looks like a very specific form of gratitude. Betty says that her decision to follow him was the right one, and Chester asks her to behave decently. He also says that he can't breathe, and that if she continues to press him like this, he will simply suffocate. Katerina reflects on the fact that she has been acting quite decisively, and this is her main problem. Mel is excited to hear that the 1,000-year-old legend turned out to be true, and it's just amazing. She adds that she has been holding this event for several years now, and today she was lucky enough to see the winner. Mel asks him to hand her the sword for a few minutes so she can examine it properly. Chester agrees, but asks her to handle the sword with care, as it is quite heavy. Mel promises that she will return as soon as she takes a look at this sword. However, as soon as she intercepts it, it falls down. Chester says that the sword should have been held tightly, and Betty reflects that that is not the problem at all. The sword falls down and pierces several meters of earth and stone pavement with its body. Mel says that this sword has recognized him as its master, so others will no longer be able to lift it. Betty reflects that such high-level ancient weapons can only be controlled by immortal cultivators. She also recalls that in the Great War of the Immortals and Demons, many magical artifacts must have been lost. Chester says the blade is a bit dull and suggests it was due to rough handling. Mel asks him if he really gave her this sword on purpose in order to use this pretext to extort money from her for repairs. After some time, another unknown person appears here who congratulates the main character on his victory. He adds that this is an incredible achievement, after which he introduces himself as the head of the family, Steve. He adds that they are throwing a banquet for the occasion and asks him if the true hero would like to dine with them. Chester asks him who he is, and Mel immediately reminds him that this man is Katerina's father. She also tells him that he pulled out this sword and therefore is a source of pride, and they want to thank him. Chester muses that this sounds incredibly cool and represents a fantastic opportunity for him to make some extra money. He also notices that Katerina looks incredibly sad and does not understand the reason for her sadness. He comes closer and asks her what she is doing here, adding that her father has invited them to a banquet which they must attend. Katerina is very happy that he came so close to her, feeling that her heart is about to burst out of her chest. Chester asks her if she's okay, noting that she's been acting weird today, but she claims he's imagining things. The head of the family notes that this man immediately stands out from the crowd thanks to his incredible energy. After some time, they are transported to the residence of this family to get to know its inhabitants better. Betty says that the house is incredibly huge, and Katerina invites them to stay the night, assuring them that it is free. Chester, meanwhile, is trying to bargain for even more money for himself, saying that he got the sword and raised the prestige of the city. The head of the family says that he is ready to give him a lot of money for being able to pull out the great sword from the legend. Chester doesn't hide the fact that all he needs in life is money, but he still hasn't said where he plans to spend it. Only now does he explain that as long as he has money, he does not need food and water, since that is how his body works. Betty recalls that this is a fasting technique where cultivators do not rely on food and water as long as they have spiritual strength. She also realizes that Chester simply doesn't remember having such skills, so he doesn't know the real reason for this behavior. Soon, the soaring dragon eats absolutely everything that was on Chester's plate because he refused. Chester asks him when he managed to get out, and he replies that he smelled food for the first time in 5,000 years. Katerina asks him if he sold the demon core from the Valley of Ghosts, and he states that he doesn't know what it is needed for. Katerina tells him that it is a rather rare item and is used to enhance equipment. She adds that simply adding a core during the forging process of armor and weapons significantly improves the quality of the product. She also notes that the Demon Hunters Association is actively buying up these cores, and they are worth a decent amount. Chester realizes that one such core could buy an entire house, meaning he would definitely get rich if he sold it. The soaring dragon suddenly swallows the core and swallows it inside, declaring that this core was an amazing 6th level one. He suddenly looks at Chester and notices that his aura has become much colder and crueler. Chester calls his companion a stupid lizard and asks if he just ate his fortune. Soaring Dragon looks at him in surprise and says that he only ate 2 demonic cores, and there is nothing wrong with that. Chester tries to put his hand in its mouth and claims that he wanted to sell the core to buy himself a house. The head of the family immediately stops him, saying that if this sword is destroyed, he will hardly be able to explain himself to the townspeople. He promises to give him a house as compensation, and Chester declares that no one forced his tongue and he will not back down. Meanwhile, the soaring dragon feels that his body is becoming much stronger with each passing second. He informs the protagonist that a powerful energy is spreading through his body, and now he has become even more powerful. Betty says that this is indeed possible because it is, after all, a weapon that has taken the form of a living being. Their conversation is interrupted by the appearance of another person who enters the room and attracts attention. This man turns out to be the butler, who reports that 3 more great families have sent gifts for Mr. Chester. Chester happily says that he is always happy to receive such gifts and orders them to be brought in as quickly as possible. First, he is shown the gifts from the Walton family, which include 30,000 gems and the right to a villa. Betty notes that no less was expected from the 3 great families, while Chester spreads his arms in glee. After this, he takes the documents of ownership of the new villa and says that he has already been promised the house, so it can be exchanged for money. Another family also gives him paladin armor, which is impenetrable and will help him in the fight against monsters. Chester says that this armor is too heavy and bulky, so it is better to exchange it for money. The doors begin to open slowly, and the butler announces that the Onassis family has decided to send him 3 beautiful maids. Chester looks at the approaching girls in surprise and realizes that they look rather suspicious. However, the maids' outfits are too revealing, and they behave rather brazenly, trying to please the main character. Coming closer and closer to him, they say that as soon as they become his servants, he will feel very comfortable. Katerina reflects on the fact that such licentiousness is not like the behavior of normal maids who are usually sent to houses. Chester says that there are 3 beautiful girls in front of him, and it will be almost impossible to resist them. He asks them if they are willing to do anything to satisfy him, and they immediately answer that they are willing to do anything. Chester immediately turns around and declares that it would be better to exchange them for money, since the attempt to appease him with women failed. The girls look at him in surprise and understand that apparently he is not interested in women and only needs money. After this, the doors open again and another group of people enter the room who are going to present him with gifts. Mel enters with his spiritual colleagues and holds in his hands a previously unseen artifact. Mel says that her gift to the brave man is a medal that will help him in his future endeavors. Mel states that the order decided to award him this medal because he was able to accomplish an incredible feat. Chester states that the medal looks quite expensive and asks if he can exchange it for money. Mel says that it is a symbol of the order's recognition and it grants him incredible privileges, so it is better to leave it. She also says that besides the medal, there is something else that served as the real reason for her coming here. Chester says that if she needs something, she can just say so, and Mel asks him to let her touch him. Betty and Katerina are very surprised to hear this and note the incredible courage of this girl, who does not waste time on doubts. Chester asks her if she really intends to use his power for her own purposes, and Mel states that she wants to measure his strength. The servant immediately admits that she practices magic, which allows her to determine the strength of others by touching them. Chester understands that it will not cost him anything serious, so he allows this ritual to be performed. Betty asks Katerina if she will really allow him to test his strength, but she says she doesn't know anything. Chester asks her how long the procedure will take. The girl reflects on the fact that she really cannot find any traces of the power of the mind and tries to move on. However, after a few more moments, she feels an incredible source of power that breaks through into her body. After this, she falls to the ground and the servants ask what happened, hoping that she was not seriously injured. Mel says that she felt some unknown force, similar to the one she felt in the Holy Ball. And at that very moment, a few moments later, a powerful earthquake occurs, shaking the walls of the building. Mel struggles to stay on her feet and wonders what this terrifying force is that has appeared out of nowhere. Chester smiles and says that he senses the monster's aura, so it's time to get to work. Meanwhile, the sky quickly becomes covered with leaden clouds, and the atmosphere becomes ominous. A dragon suddenly appears in the sky and begins to unleash fiery attacks wherever it can reach. These attacks leave a huge number of residents with serious burns, and some are left without life. The girl falls to the ground and does not understand where this monster came from, because before they existed exclusively in fairy tales. Looking up at the sky, she again notices the approaching silhouette and tries to understand how it got here. The ancient dragon continues to attack everything that comes his way in a mad rage, sparing no one and nothing. The girl looks at the approaching fireball and realizes that her city will burn to the ground, and the same will happen to her. Chester suddenly appears right in front of her and tells her that she doesn't have to fear for her life because he has come to save her. After this, he tries to understand how best to act in this situation in order to neutralize the fire. He exhales and sends his power forward to dispel the fire spells and secure the area. Mel and Katerina can't believe that this man was able to destroy the fireball with such easy movements. Betty remains unperturbed, saying that this is a standard situation that they will soon get used to. Mel says that this dragon has attacked the city more than once because it was attracted to the energy of the holy ball. She claims that the dragon was spewing fire, destroying everything around it, and turning the city into a real branch of hell. She also states that their mages were powerless in the face of such a strong enemy and could do nothing. Mel also says that fortunately, over time, the dragon weakened and stopped attacking so actively. Betty assumes that this dragon must have some connection with this blade, since it keeps appearing here. Mel says that Chester should definitely figure everything out since he owns this sword and will be able to kill the dragon. Chester says that the girl doesn't have to worry because he will be her bodyguard for a while. She looks at him lovingly and says that she has never met such brave and amazing people. Meanwhile, the dragon continues to destroy the city, looking for another place to burn to the ground. Chester guesses that the animal must be crazy to try to attack head-on with such ferocity. After this, he immediately draws his sword and prepares to take this powerful attack with incredible ease. Even his face hardly changes, and from the outside, it seems that he is completely unimpressed by the size of the monster. He then creates a powerful explosion with a wave of his hand, which immediately puts the dragon in an awkward position. Mel is surprised by such a terrifying force, realizing that the entire city is shaking as if it is about to fall into the ground. The smoke is starting to clear, and one can only guess how serious the damage from this strike is. Chester says that this animal is not very obedient and apparently has gone mad from incredible pain. Chester also says that this is a very ancient monster, but he weakly senses the energy flows within it. The soaring dragon says that this beast must have been alive during the great battle and swallowed the great artifact. He also adds that this beast senses the spiritual power of the sword and thinks that it can relieve him of pain. He adds that he never paid much attention to it, since it had not appeared for 1,000 years. Chester happily says that this artifact is inside the dragon, which means it can be taken out and sold. Immediately after this, he declares that if he does not receive the artifact, he will hardly be able to let this dragon go alive. Immediately after this, he delivers a powerful blow, throwing the dragon into the air for another attack. He also states that he can guarantee that it will be quite quick, but it will definitely not be painless. At the same moment, he takes out his sword and delivers a powerful attack directly to the body of the unprotected dragon. After this blow, cracks begin to appear on the dragon's body, from which blood immediately begins to spurt. However, this also proves to be enough to push the artifact closer to the beast's throat. After this, he spits it out, finally getting rid of the serious torment that this substance caused him. Betty says that the dragon has finally cast out this artifact, which means Chester's victory in this battle becomes obvious. Chester calmly reaches out his hand to intercept the shining object. He looks at it carefully and realizes that it is an ancient magical artifact in the form of a mirror. Looking into the mirror, he is suddenly transported to another space and realizes that he now has a pocket pantry. The soaring dragon suggests that one can not only store items here, but also live and practice. Suddenly, the dragon recognizes him and calls him the head of the Shuang sect, loudly declaring that it has finally recognized him. Chester asks him if they know each other, and the dragon states that he is a cultivator who fought their demonic deity. The giant lizard begins to carefully analyze the protagonist, stating that something is clearly wrong here. Chester asks what exactly he means, to which the dragon replies that he looks the same, but his temperament has changed. He also adds that his strength is significantly inferior to what it used to be and tries to find out what happened to him. After this, the dragon asks what happened to the demon god, and Chester states that he probably died. These words enrage the dragon, and he says that the demonic god is absolutely powerful. He also states that all living things obey him, and no cultivator is able to stop him, even if it is Chester himself. Immediately after this, he creates giant energy balls, trying to bring down all their power directly on Chester's head. The valiant protagonist counterattacks, claiming that he himself asked for his unenviable fate. He orders his soaring dragon to move forward to destroy the fiery energy rushing towards him. After this, he allows the use of the dragon sword skill to finally destroy the enemy once and for all. A spiritual dragon avatar appears around the sword and rushes forward with incredible strength and speed. It took just one attack to reduce the giant red lizard to a pitiful skeleton. Chester is amazed by the incredible power of his weapon and tries to understand how such a large dragon could die so quickly. He decides to take a little rest after this battle, despite the fact that it did not require any effort from him. He offers the dragon a demonic core, and the dragon immediately declares that he has been thinking about swallowing it ever since the monster appeared. Chester also asks what this dragon meant when he said he was the head of the sect. Soaring Dragon states that when they first met, he said he had lost his memory, so he decided to take things slow. After this, he states that Chester is actually just a fragment of the soul of a true follower of the Shuang sect. He also says that for some reason this part of the soul has gained consciousness and is now wandering around the world. Chester adds that when he came to, he was still in the Xuan tree for some time. He also states that his release only occurred when a great thunder began and it split the tree. Soaring Dragon adds that this tree is an ancient sacred vessel and evil forces cannot influence those inside. The Soaring Dragon also tells that 5,000 years ago, a demonic deity was born into the world, which was the sky itself. However, he was prophesied to die at the hands of an immortal, and so the demons created a corrupted weapon against cultivators. However, the sect's founder, Chester, fought until the last moment, trying to stop the demon god. Chester used all his power to trap the demon god in his own soul and then explode it. Soaring Dragon says that because the sect leader practiced a secret technique, his soul was split into 9 pieces. The Soaring Dragon notes that he did not acknowledge his power before, but now he has received his approval. The dragon also recommends that he revive the honor and glory of the immortal cultivators who are no longer remembered. Soaring Dragon also states that their first order of business is to find the remaining spirit fragments. Chester says that if someone wants to take on this responsibility, then they can do so since they are not interested in it. Soaring Dragon realizes that if Chester doesn't search for the fragments of the original spirit, their world will end. He tells him that each spirit fragment contains incredible power and various techniques for strengthening it. Finally, he remembers that Chester is just a man greedy for money and power, to whom he promises incredible treasures. Chester almost immediately succumbs to this provocation and says that he always dreamed of finding the fragments of his spirit and restoring his strength. After this, he heads towards the exit of the mirror and says that they have already been sitting in this place for too long. Meanwhile, they are transported to an unknown place, around which an incredible amount of evil energy is concentrated. The demoness turns to the lady goddess of demons and says that she has brought what they have asked of her for so long. After this, she hands her a desecrated weapon called the Ruler's Club and gives it to her for use. A mysterious girl, incredibly tall, uses magic to attract this cube to herself. After that, she says that this club is really great and that she really wanted to gain this power. These demons also say that she sensed the aura of an immortal near a city called Furno. After a few moments, the demon that had been in that place the whole time declares that this is simply unacceptable. He looks angrily at his subordinate and says that the head of this scoundrel must be brought as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, they are transported back to the city, and there is very little time left before the main character's departure. Mel reflects on how, ever since he arrived in this town, amazing things have been happening all the time. She also remembers that he used spatial techniques in addition to killing the giant dragon. Mel asks herself why, after meeting him, she can't think of anything but him. Immediately after this, she realizes that thinking about such things is a sin since she must restrain her emotions. Meanwhile, they are transported to Katarina's bedroom, where, for some reason, Betty is located. Katarina herself is sitting in her bathroom and thinking about how she still hasn't done anything, even though he will be leaving soon. She wonders if they will have the opportunity to meet again and whether it is worth confessing her feelings now. She notes that it is very awkward and that if she is rejected, she will hardly ever be able to open up to another person. Betty watches her and reflects on the fact that Katarina has good physical attributes and large financial reserves. She notes that if nothing works out, Chester will probably regret it, so they need to be persuaded to get along. Immediately after this, she decides to use a special gas to penetrate Katarina's consciousness. Katarina feels her body begin to move on its own, as if her will is completely lost. After some time, Chester comes to the girl's bedroom to check on her before leaving. However, he does not find her and asks where she went, adding that tomorrow he will leave this city. Katarina comes out to meet him and says that she has been waiting for his return for a very long time. She shyly looks away and says that she is glad that he still couldn't leave her like that. Chester notes that her complexion is odd and recommends covering up as it could cause a cold. He also says that he didn't want to disturb her so late and recommends drinking more hot tea to avoid getting sick. Katarina stops him and carefully rises, hoping that he won't leave her right now. She also confesses to him that when he saved her from the goblins, she already fell in love with him and still cannot stop thinking about him. She also says that before he goes, it would be nice to make special memories with each other. Chester points out that she would never say anything like that, and that the fox must have influenced her in some way. Katarina vehemently denies this, saying that she is in her right mind and understands perfectly well what she is doing. The next day, when they set out from this city, the sun shines especially brightly and the weather is simply wonderful. Betty notices that Chester hasn't said anything all this time and asks what happened. She also notes that he has become somewhat absent-minded, as if he had slept very poorly the previous night. Chester says these doubts are unfounded, as he slept perfectly last night. Betty smiles and says that this is wonderful because a good mood will help him move on. After this, they head deep into the forest, trying to follow a specific route to reach the artifact. However, after some time, several figures appear in front of them, looking at them attentively. Carl calls him by name and says that today is the end of his journey and that his journey is coming to an end. Betty assumes he's completely lost his mind and asks how he plans to make it this far alone. Carl laughs and says that he never said he came here alone, while another person appears. This woman is Carl's mother, who says that this sword cannot belong to a man like Chester. She also says that he should give up the sword, and then his family will never bother him again. However, that is not all, as other warriors whom he has never encountered before also come out against him. One of them reports that he received information that Chester, during the hero test, took the demonic core and killed Melvin. The man's father also comes here and declares that he will avenge the unjust death of his son. Carl also states that now is not the time for talking, as everything will be decided solely by brute force. Chester says that he doesn't care at all what levels of power are against him in this fight. This means that everyone is equal before his blade, and if someone stands in his way, he will definitely die. These warriors say that his insolence knows no bounds, but he will be taught a lesson and destroyed fairly quickly. Carl reflects on how he has outdone him many times, taking away what is rightfully his, but now it is time for payback. Chester says that if he is so eager to fight him, then they can attack first, because he is in a hurry. One of the fighters says that he was just lucky, and now he will show him what real strength is. As soon as he takes aim, he immediately delivers a sharp and confident blow, which turns into a bright lightning bolt. This lightning immediately rushes forward to cut through everything in its path, gradually increasing in size. Chester looks at the approaching projectile in surprise and says that such lightning does not impress him. At the same time, he creates a counterattack in the form of a lightning dragon, stating that he can create something similar himself. This lightning turns out to be so powerful and incredible that it easily interrupts the attack of some amateur. The lightning-fast fighter looks at the protagonist in surprise and tries to understand why his abilities were useless. However, Melvin's father steps forward and puts up his shield, claiming that he has enough strength to resist him. His shield is immediately charged with powerful divine energy, which strengthens the steel to its limit. This blow is blocked, but the price paid for it is not so small. The shield remains intact, and hot vapors begin to emanate from it as the metal has been severely damaged. Melvin's father trembles, feeling that such a powerful attack has almost completely disabled his arm. He notes that if the shield were not strong enough, the consequences would be too serious. Carl's mother looks at them in surprise and asks them if they haven't fought anyone for a long time and have lost their skills. She notes that their reputation was forged in arms and proven in battle, so she wouldn't be afraid of some boy. After this, she declares that if they allow him to leave this city, then their 3 families will also be disgraced. Immediately after, she unleashes a powerful attack, declaring that the 2 have no more than a second to live. Chester continues to stand there as if nothing had happened, completely unconcerned about what was flying towards him. In the place where they had just been standing, multiple explosions erupted due to the incredible rage that was raging within this woman. She says that this is not enough damage that she can potentially do to these villains. She continues to strike in the same direction and states that she wants them to die in the blink of an eye. Melvin's father reflects that this woman is truly crazy, and even his shield couldn't save him. Carl reflects that his mother probably chopped up this scoundrel, and this is just revenge for what he did. Chester, meanwhile, intercepts another blow with incredible ease and pulls his opponent towards him. He also states that she is dressed very strangely and that she could probably get a lot of money for that skirt. Immediately after this, he pulls her towards him, causing great surprise in such a strong woman. She asks him what he plans to do, and he says he just liked her clothes. Carl's mother misunderstands his intentions and assumes that he is some kind of pathetic pervert. She immediately jumps aside and reflects on the fact that he cannot afford to lose his reputation. A small squabble ensues between them over who should attack the main character next. Carl, in turn, cannot believe that they are not succeeding because they are all top-level masters. Carl is also surprised that Chester has no mental powers, but he somehow copes. Chester, meanwhile, egged them on, saying that they were going to teach him a lesson, but for some reason, they were hesitating. At that very moment, he makes a dash towards his opponent in order to demonstrate his new powers. He claims that he only mastered this technique a couple of days ago, so he is not yet accustomed to its proper application. This technique allows him to destroy the clothes on his opponent's body in the blink of an eye. Carl doesn't fully understand why a cultivator who fights demons would use such a technique, but that's not important right now. Much more important is the chilling feeling that arises in people whose bodies are uncovered. He says that this is a new technique, and it seems promising, but this time, the experiment turns out to be unsuccessful. They immediately ask him how he dares to humiliate the young master, declaring that they will destroy him for this. Chester immediately rushes forward, declaring that in this case, he chooses targets and more suitable objects. Carl's mother immediately jumps back and dodges the powerful blows that are trying to destroy her clothes. She calls him nothing but a jerk, saying that she is too old for him and that he should get over his thoughts. She also says that for the sake of her bright future, she will kill him and he will understand what it is like to experience Jenny's wrath. After this, she decides to use the ancient magic that all the higher members of her family practice. Taking aim at him, she decides to use the skill of the destroying shot, which splits into small pieces. Small spheres rush straight towards Chester, causing powerful explosions, but he easily dodges them. Chester argues that he just wants money, but for some reason they misinterpret his intentions. Jenny says that he can run as much as he wants, since her magic missiles will still be aimed at him. Chester, meanwhile, runs towards Betty and tells her not to move because he wants to take one thing. Betty advises him to be careful as these projectiles are quite fast, but he remains calm. Jumping forward, he says that these projectiles are too slow to catch up with him, so there is nothing to worry about. Its speed is so great that no projectile, not even a bullet from a pistol, could catch up with it. Betty manages to notice that he took something out of his bag, but it happens so quickly that she doesn't look closely. Immediately after this, he breaks the distance between himself and Jenny, declaring that he no longer needs anything from her. However, he decides to go all out if she so strongly accuses him of indecency. Jenny immediately grabs the fallen clothes and calls him pathetic, stating that he messed everything up the first time. Chester says he needs more practice, then takes her whip as a weapon. Jenny looks at him with fear and wonders what he is going to do. Chester responds by bending the whip in a specific way to use it in an unexpected way. Jenny finds herself bound hand and foot and loses all ability to resist. In his imagination, Chester really does have serious plans for her and decides to take advantage of her vulnerability. Carl calls him a pathetic animal and demands that he immediately release his mother and not dare treat her like that. Betty realizes that Chester thinks in a way that is somewhat atypical for other people and calls him a person with special needs. Carl turns to his comrades and says that they should not stand still, demanding revenge. Both of these fighters say that they will not allow anything illegal to happen to dear Mrs. Jenny. One of them decides to use his maximum capabilities by preparing his blade. This blade is charged with a massive amount of electricity to deal as much damage as possible in one strike. The same thing happens with Melvin's father, who turns to divine powers to strengthen himself. Having received the patronage of the gods, he also receives significant bonuses to his characteristics. Chester looks at Melvin's father in surprise and says that he has never seen such strong people. His opponents say that he has become much stronger and will now feel incomparable power. The opponents, taking aim at Chester, deal a crushing blow, completely forgetting that Jenny is next to him. This impact is so powerful that the flash from the explosion spreads over several tens of kilometers. He reflects that it was a pretty strong blow that could have hit Jenny, but he had to hit, for sure. A few moments later, he can already hear Chester's sarcastic voice, which says that it was a truly impressive attack. He also states that an attack of such magnitude for a low-level warrior is truly impressive. After this, he says with a smile that the only thing he doesn't understand is how they can call themselves gods. Melvin's father immediately takes a few steps back, not understanding how this man could have survived this at all. The stress begins to affect him more and more, and he even begins to mark time. He reflects on how he put all his strength into that blow, yet there wasn't a scratch left on the man. He also adds that he has received divine blessing, which means he will not lose this fight. He also calls Chester a petty beggar, and Chester almost immediately closes the distance between them. He asks him irritably about what he just called him, feeling that such an insult hurts his nature. Melvin's father doesn't fully understand the incredible strength that Chester has, and calls him a pathetic beggar. At that moment, he receives serious wounds directly to the neck, which immediately pierce his armor. This blow turns out to be quick and deadly, so no healer can save him from death. Chester, in turn, says that one must watch one's language and be more polite in the next life. Carl, meanwhile, is still busy covering his naked body with clothes and does not have time to dodge. He just looks at the attacking knight and wonders why he is dragging him into the grave with him if he himself is dying. A few moments later, this giant knight, clad in steel armor, lands right on top of Carl. Immediately after this, it begins to shrink because the moment the life in it faded, the blessing ceased to function. Chester looks at Carl and says that this whole pointless battle was because of some pathetic little brat. However, he does not feel the slightest sympathy for him and states that he deserved the fate he received. Immediately after this, he turns to the last warrior, saying that he can attack if he wants to so much. However, the very next second, he turns sharply and runs away with an incredible speed that any runner would envy. Chester doesn't quite understand this tactic, and only after a few seconds realizes that it was a retreat maneuver. The fighter says that this war is not equal and that all his other colleagues were defeated in a second. He notes that in terms of combat strength, he is not yet as good as his colleagues, so he can only rely on speed. Meanwhile, Katerina wakes up and wonders why she feels so hot. She also assumes that the two have probably already set off on their journey and tries to figure out what he is doing now. Chester, meanwhile, quickly eliminates the fleeing fighter and returns to Jenny, declaring that she is the last one left. Jenny says that she is a decent woman and asks not to touch her, promising to do anything. Chester says that no one forced her to say these words and hands her a promissory note to sign. Jenny says that according to this bond, she owes him a huge amount of money, but she does not have that kind of money now. Chester says that other families will probably give him the money and she knows she can't risk her son's life. After a while, he simply leaves and she tries to crawl to her son, hoping that he is still alive. She reflects that victory will still be theirs, as she will not let her dear one die. Suddenly, an unknown figure appears in front of her, who says that an incredible flow of spiritual energy is felt here. She asks Jenny where the immortal who probably fought here went. Jenny says that she doesn't quite understand what this is all about, since she hasn't met any immortals. Jenny also asks to untie her quickly and says that in a little while, there will be nothing left to help her son. The demoness, meanwhile, says that the strange appearance of this woman is probably due to contact with this man. Jenny says that if we are talking about the person they fought with, then it is better to abandon this idea. He is too strong. The demoness decisively declares that she has come to find and finish off this scoundrel once and for all. Jenny immediately replies that the man has gone east, and if she goes after him now, she might be able to catch up with him. The demoness is surprised that this man decided to leave and leave living witnesses who could turn him in. Jenny is outraged that this unknown wanderer did not even try to untie her, although she could have helped. However, after a few moments, a giant shadow looms over her, which clearly does not belong to the cloud. She looks up in surprise and tries to understand what it is, realizing that her life is over. The demoness opens a giant portal from which a large piece of solid rock arrives to crush them. Having eliminated all witnesses, she speaks of how cruelty is an integral part of any battle. She arrogantly declares that kind-hearted and gentle cultivators will not pose any competition to her. Chester and Betty, meanwhile, continue their journey, and after a while, a bright moon rises above them. Betty says that he's been looking at this receipt the whole way, and Chester happily replies that they will definitely give him all this money. Betty realizes that in this world, he can only feed on energy by holding these spiritual stones in his hands. Chester suddenly says that they have been on the road for quite a long time, and she is tired, so they need to make a stop. Betty asks him why he cares about her so much, and he reminds her that they rely on her instincts. Chester opens the mirror and says that it is perfect for this purpose, and that she probably hasn't had the opportunity to visit there yet. Betty, meanwhile, wonders why she feels so strange, as if there is a heavy stone on her soul. Looking at Chester, she replies that this man is quite simple and is not interested in anything except financial gain. She also wonders if this man was as unperturbed when he shared his bed with Katerina. After this, she quickly comes to her senses, trying to understand how she could have thought about something like that. Getting up quickly, she says that she needs to leave this place, because otherwise these thoughts will not give her peace. Gradually, she creates a special portal to escape from the mirror and find herself in the normal world. Betty reflects that she was simply relying on his spiritual strength to survive, but now she feels strange. A few moments later, she suddenly finds herself looming over a giant rock that is rapidly falling. The stone destroys everything it touches, but Betty is agile enough to dodge it. Stopping, she wonders who dared to attack her and assumes that they are more robbers. However, after a few moments, she discovers that some stone elementals have appeared in front of her. Betty says irritably that she just wanted to get some fresh air, but now she's been distracted. The stone golems begin to pound the ground, creating more shockwaves and trying to confuse her. Betty jumps into the air to use her purple flame skill and attack them at the perfect moment. Where the two stone giants had just stood, bright flashes appeared, signaling their destruction. Betty lands on the ground and tries to frantically look around to figure out where her enemy is. She asks who decided to play these stupid games and demands that the opponent show himself immediately. The demoness suddenly appears right behind her and asks with a smile if she really wants to meet her right now. Betty jumps back, trying to figure out when this girl managed to get behind her so unnoticed. The demoness says that she was following the trail of spiritual energy, which suddenly ended here, and she appeared out of nowhere. Looking at her, the demoness says that a huge amount of spiritual energy emanates from her and that she is probably a cultivator. The very next second, she delivers a powerful blow with her spear, ignoring the attempts to create illusions. Betty looks at her opponent in surprise and asks how she managed to break the spell of charm. The demoness says that pain is the easiest way to dispel such illusions, and she simply hit herself with something sharp. Immediately after this, she pulls the spear forward to deal a serious blow and cause painful bleeding. Betty falls to the ground, feeling incredible pain that is unlikely to heal under these conditions. The demoness says that her spells were truly amazing, and it was even a pity to get out of this dream world. Smiling, she says that sooner or later, the demon god will become the conqueror of this world, and she places her hopes on him. After this, she decides to interrupt this sudden session of sincere confessions and says that she will not allow anyone to distort this world. Betty reflects that she has been asleep for so long that it will be very difficult for her to be revived again, so she cannot die here. As a last hope, she calls out loudly to Chester for help, saying that she needs him more than ever before. Chester almost instantly flies out of the pocket dimension and heads towards her at the speed of light. With one wave of his hand, he destroys a stone shard that is flying towards Betty and would otherwise be fatal. However, now this lifeless pile of stone splits into several pieces and falls to the ground. Chester points out that it's quite dangerous to walk alone in the middle of the night and states that she should invite him along next time. Betty looks at him with genuine surprise, after which she feels tears welling up on her face. She also asks him why he didn't come a little earlier, because then she would have been able to save face. Chester says that he dozed off a little, but now everything will be fine, since he managed to arrive on time. The demoness suddenly begins to feel a little strange when looking at this man for one specific reason. Looking at him, she realizes that this man is God, being practically identical entities. She wonders how this can be, since the demonic god is a being of noble blood. The demoness also says that she was perplexed as to who and how could do something like this to that woman, but now everything has become clear. She states that he is emitting incredibly intense spiritual energy and concludes that she must kill him. Chester looks around and wonders what kind of demonic magic is capable of raising dust. The demoness says that everything is not so simple, and that now she will make him regret the words he just spoke. Moments later, she creates a hurricane that consists entirely of sharp rocks. This hurricane is heading straight towards him, leaving him no chance of escape. The demoness joyfully says that these countless stones and debris will tear his flesh like a razor. She also says that she will not give him a chance to resist and will simply finish him off before it is too late. The force of this explosion is so strong that some blocks are blown away by the shockwave. The demoness happily says that this is over and that now nothing should remain of this guy except bloody dust. However, as the smoke clears, she discovers a golden capsule with something inside. Chester mentions that the demoness mentioned Jenny and asks her if she got home safe and sound. The demoness is truly shocked to see that this attack has made absolutely no impression on Chester. Besides all this, she still can't figure out why his shield didn't get a single scratch. Chester gradually loses his patience and releases a blast of energy, simultaneously asking if she didn't hear him. This clot of energy flies at tremendous speed and almost instantly pierces through it, leaving serious wounds. The demoness falls to the ground, having received an incredible amount of kinetic energy, and flies back several more meters. She tries to figure out if she was destroyed in one hit, noting that this cultivator turned out to be incredibly strong. Chester immediately approaches her and says that he will repeat his question about Jenny and asks how she is feeling. The demoness looks at him in bewilderment and says that they were enemies and she simply finished her off with one blow. However, after a few moments, she realizes that this man's aura has changed and he has become even more evil. The demoness tries to understand how this is even possible and guesses that, most likely, she said something wrong. Chester is naturally furious as he has just been cheated out of a large amount of potential money. Gradually, clouds and an incredibly menacing aura begin to accumulate directly above the demoness's head. She feels her body begin to unconsciously retreat back as if she were faced with pure, deadly intent. She notes that the power of his suppression is simply beyond imagination, and it is impossible to even breathe normally in front of him. She suggests that perhaps there was a secret romantic affair between them, which is why he is so worried about her. The demoness quickly comes to her senses, realizing that the fact that she killed the woman means nothing and that she cannot intimidate her. She quickly gets to her feet and says that she will never let anyone see her in this state again. Having prepared for the final battle, she declares that she is a level 5 monster and the Demon King's subordinate. After this, she declares that she will put all her power into this attack and show him her strongest spell. Chester watches this skill with some surprise, trying to figure out what she really wants to achieve. The demoness attempts to cast the most powerful spell she has ever learned in her long life. This spell is a meteor shower, and it is unlikely that any living creature could survive such an attack. In the sky, despite the incredible cloudiness, a bright point appears and rapidly approaches. Gradually, other meteorites follow this point, rushing straight towards Chester. Chester looks closely at these meteorites and says that it is truly incredible and that they are real. After this, he summons his sword and says that even in this case, they will not be able to oppose him in any way. The soaring dragon opens its massive mouth to absorb all the power contained within these meteorites. After the meteorite hits his body, he inflates like a real balloon and hangs in the air for a while. However, after a short pause, he dramatically falls down, hitting the ground with his gigantic and elastic body. Immediately after this, he exhales, saying that it was a heavy snack, after which he will have to sleep for a long time. Chester at this time declares that if a simple demon wants to take his life, then he is clearly overestimating his capabilities. The demoness cannot believe that she has now lost and realizes that the power of the cultivators was so terrifying. The demoness notes that it is no wonder that the Demon King once died at his hands if Chester is so strong. Chester says he has one last question for her, and she replies that she won't tell him anything about the Demon King. Chester states that he doesn't care about the Demon King, then hands her an IOU. The demoness looks carefully at the conditions and says that she has no money and will not be able to pay. Chester replies that this is not the answer he expected, and then states that the mirror must take her clothes and equipment. Within moments, a powerful whirlpool swallows up everything the demon was wearing. Chester muses that these clothes are unlikely to sell for much, but it's still better than nothing. The demoness declares that this is obscene and asks why he needed her clothes. She also states that her body and soul belong to the demon god, and no one dares to touch them. Chester replies that she is imagining things too much, since he doesn't care who is in front of him because he destroys all the demons. The demoness turns around sharply and notices the ball lightning next to her, trying to figure out when it managed to appear there. Chester activates the Law of 5 Thunderstorms skill and gives the order to destroy the demon, causing a massive explosion. Like a tough guy, he doesn't turn around when the explosion occurs and isn't at all worried about his clothes. In the place where the demoness had just been, there remains only a sparkling demonic core within which energy is contained. This demonic core possesses incredible power as it was obtained from a much stronger opponent. Chester immediately turns to his dragon and recommends that he refresh himself with this core while he can. He then turns to the fox and tells her that he has dealt with the demon and that she should be more careful. However, he doesn't have time to finish speaking and understands that now it is necessary to save her as quickly as possible. The point is that Betty was seriously injured and lost consciousness. He places her next to a tree to stabilize her condition and tries to bring her back to her senses. Realizing that she needs medical attention, he slaps her to bring her back to consciousness. He tells her not to sleep, as he still needs her help to find artifacts and sell them. Betty comes to her senses and stops his hand from hitting her. She says that such help is useless and does more harm than good. Chester happily lifts her onto his shoulder and says that he will take her to the doctor. Betty replies that there is no need for that, as she can recover from his spiritual energy. Chester asks if even serious wounds can be healed this way, and she replies that they need water. She states that the process will go faster in the hot springs, and Chester guesses that they will have to bathe together. He has no choice, so he heads for the nearest body of water that he can sense. After some time, he reports that they did not find any hot springs, but an ordinary lake would be suitable for their purposes. Chester asks how much he needs to undress and suggests leaving at least a minimum of clothing. He also asks her if she needs to undress, but she replies that there is no need. She recommends that he start radiating spiritual energy, and he immediately follows her advice. Betty is once again surprised by the powerful flow of energy and notes that defeating the demon is quite logical. As she gets closer, she feels like this energy is intoxicating her, and the pain gradually recedes. She also senses that his aura is so strong that her spiritual perception is unable to appreciate its extent. After this, she decides to kiss him to speed up the energy transfer process. They lose their balance and fall into the water, but thanks to their skills, they can breathe freely underwater. Betty feels that this is not enough, and she needs more energy to fully recover. Meanwhile, a dragonfly lands on the surface of the lake and slowly looks around. Betty suddenly emerges from the water and declares that she is fine and has fully recovered. Chester doesn't feel well and asks if she tried to kill him that way. Betty apologizes and explains that his energy was too strong and she was unable to stop in time. The next morning, they continue on their way to reach the next treasure as quickly as possible. Chester informs the dragon that he has eaten a level 5 demon core, so he must fly forward as quickly as possible. Chester also asks his companion if they really have to stay so close, to which she laughs it off. However, after a few moments, she suddenly freezes, sensing the incredible aura of a powerful artifact nearby. She immediately informs him that they may have stumbled upon one of the very treasures they have been looking for so long. Meanwhile, they descend into the forests, where they are pursuing an elf who is trying to escape. The bandits say that if you sell the elf on the black market, you can get a tidy sum. The elf turns around and the bandits assume that she has decided not to resist and to surrender to their mercy. An elf girl named Aurora states that if they want to kidnap her, that makes them her enemy. After this, she turns to nature magic to summon the lunar butterflies to her side. The bandits say that the pathetic insects won't be able to stop them anyway because they are too weak. Aurora decides to use the Moon Curse skill, which has an incredibly powerful weakening effect. The bandits quickly feel very tired and notice that their skin has become pale, as if they have aged. They immediately ask how they will now look in the eyes of girls and demand that everything be returned back. Aurora replies that they themselves are to blame for what happened, since when attacking elves, one must consider the consequences. 2 more people appear behind her, saying that the elf clan's magic is indeed interesting. These people are members of an elite gang of robbers named Jenna and Mark and intend to take Aurora. Jenna says that she has a lucrative offer. If Aurora shows them the way to the elf village, she will stay alive. Aurora refuses, declaring that she will not fall for deception since she knows their nature very well. After this, she demands that they not look down on the elves' magic and declares that she will make them pay for their arrogance. Jenna says that this is too hysterical a reaction because she is using a skill that the opponent already knows. Immediately after this, she creates several powerful vortex tornadoes to weaken and neutralize opponents. She states that no matter how powerful magic is, if it cannot touch an opponent, it is just a dud. She also says that her whirlwind, like a sharp blade, destroys everything in its path. Aurora notes that this is the first time in her life that she has left the village and has already encountered such strong opponents. She muses that perhaps she should use the most powerful move in her arsenal, but the hurricane suddenly dissipates. Aurora looks at the clouds of dust in surprise and tries to understand what happened, suspecting that something fell from the sky. Chester and Betty land on the ground and look around, trying to figure out where they are. Betty reports that the aura of the treasure is coming from this girl, and Aurora understands that this is clearly not a good sign. Chester suddenly approaches her and states that she is wearing very little clothing, but it is unclear where she hid the artifact. Aurora doesn't understand what he means when suddenly he looks down, trying to find the treasure he needs. He continues to stare at her and wonders where she could have hidden it. Mark and Jenna look at the strangers who interrupted their fight and don't understand why they are being so rude. Mark says that it is necessary to show these scoundrels what the elite of a gang of robbers is like. Jenna also says that those who do not respect magic are unworthy to walk this earth. Together they join forces and attack Chester from behind, unaware of what they've gotten themselves into. Chester turns around irritably and declares that they are talking too much and are starting to irritate him. Jenna and Mark instantly freeze, not understanding how this man suppressed their fighting spirit in a second. Chester gives them quick slaps, claiming they should have noticed he was talking to a girl. After this, he throws them aside so that they do not interfere, declaring that they are too intrusive. Jenna and Mark take serious damage to their pride, not their bodies, but they are unable to resist. What's also surprising is that their most powerful attacks were destroyed in a second with just one glance from Chester. The main character himself declares that all outsiders need to leave here since he is busy. Aurora wonders if these two strongest warriors could have been defeated so easily. Betty says that this isn't the funniest thing yet, after which Chester summons a mirror to collect their clothes and equipment. A few moments later, he uses his magical artifact to place even more objects there. Aurora doesn't fully understand why it was necessary to undress the warriors, since their clothes were of no value. Chester turns sharply and looks at the innocent girl with his shining, greedy eyes. Aurora falls to the ground in fear, feeling that she might have to face something even more terrible. She asks not to undress her, adding that there is nothing to see there, and that this is the first time she has left the village. Chester states that he never even had such thoughts, as he is a decent person and does not intend to act in such a way. After this, he decides to explain why he came here, so as not to cause misunderstanding with the honest girl. Aurora says she doesn't have the valuable artifact, but Betty claims to sense its aura. Betty asks her if she ate anything strange, to which Aurora replies that all elves drink from a sacred spring. In response, she explains that this is living water, and the elders say that it was from this source that the elves appeared. She also states that one needs to drink a little living water, and then any imperfections will leave the body forever. She adds that when elves reach a certain age, they bathe in the spring, and this is how new elves are born. Betty assumes that it has something to do with the artifact, which is why she senses an aura of treasure from it. Aurora reveals that she left the forest because a monster occupied their source several months ago. She adds that this monster does terrible things, attacking with its strange and long fingers. She also says that once you've been captured, it's impossible to resist, and that it's the sworn enemy of their clan. She warns that this monster is not as simple as it seems, and often uses deceptive tactics. Aurora also reports that she left the village to find those who can help deal with this monster. Chester stands up abruptly and declares that, of course, he will help save the elf clan from this terrible monster. He also claims that this monster is acting stupidly, wasting such a precious resource on who knows what. As they approach the forest, they find it has become incredibly gloomy, but Aurora explains that this is for protection. Betty also asks her why she keeps staring at Chester so intently. Aurora admits that she has never been so close to a man since all elves are women. She also says that if he enters the village, he will attract a lot of attention and recommends that he change his clothes. Chester reflects that such an outfit would hardly be to God's taste and would look unfavorable. After this, he states that he agreed to help and is not going to hide, and if they look at him, he does not mind. After a while, they come out of the forest and find themselves in an elven village, which really does look very beautiful. Chester looks closely at the elven settlement and notes that it looks beautiful and peaceful. He also adds that it would be possible to live here if it weren't for his mission to find all the treasures of his sect. The beautiful girl immediately turns to the princess and informs her that she has finally returned, after which she asks about her companions. Aurora says that these two are her saviors and that she brought them because they are very good people. She also states that their mission will allow the Fountain of Life to be returned to full use. The other elves ask why she is so flat-chested, and Chester replies that he is a man, and it is normal. These words instantly spread throughout the village, and Fusrusias, for. And so the Huldiwudak refak Easter rally folds are Yezavur, Besorlel they're very surprised to see him. They wonder if this is what a man really looks like, and their faces begin to change in surprise. They also loudly announce to everyone that a man has appeared in the village and that the princess has brought him. Aurora reflects that she knew there would be serious unrest here if she told about this. Beautiful women from all over the village come running, declaring that they want to see the man. They also claim that such events happen once in a century, so they cannot be missed. Surrounding him, they say that he looks unusual and handsome, like all the men they have seen before. Chester feels a little embarrassed because he has never received so many compliments. Betty says he shouldn't be shy and can't believe he's still so popular. Soaring Dragon says it was a great idea to come here, and Chester asks him what he's doing here. The Soaring Dragon unashamedly declares that he came here to look at these beautiful girls. The elves are very surprised by such an unexpected creature and assume that it is some part of a man. The Soaring Dragon begins to advertise himself, saying that he is incredibly strong and can give anyone a ride. The girl says that this thing looks magnificent and majestic, and if you can ride it, then it's interesting. Chester says he can kill the dragon, but Betty warns him that the weapon will disappear. After some time, the queen comes here, who is Aurora's sister and the main person in the village. This queen, named Lovi, declares that no human has set foot here for 5,000 years, and that today the ancestral taboo has been broken. By highlighting her face, she says that this person came here to help her, so she has nothing against it. Chester notes that the girl doesn't look very serious, as she looks like she's just been drooling over him. Lovi suddenly says that it would be great to show the guest around the village, since she is going to talk to him. After this, she turns to Chester and says that they should retire to this house for very important negotiations. Betty suspects that this queen has very selfish intentions, as she appears to be a person lacking warmth. Chester says there is no need to discuss tactics because he can destroy the beast's lair very easily. Lovey, in turn, says that she would like him to give her his warmth in exchange for serious financial investments. Chester looks at her with some surprise, but understands that this is an offer that it would be foolish to refuse. Meanwhile, the other elves look at the dragon that has turned into a sword and are amazed at such magic. The Soaring Dragon says that he can become a copy of any person or animal he can touch. After this, he takes the form of a ghostly servant, whom he never fought, but who was taken from Chester's memory. He also shows them a level 5 monster, which was a demoness who had recently been damaged. Betty watches these strange conversations and tries to understand why the dragon immediately began to behave so strangely. She feels deeply ashamed of the creature's behavior and hopes that Chester will quickly finish his business with Lovey. Meanwhile, we are transported to the camp of wild bandits, where not the most pleasant atmosphere now reigns. Mark turns to the captain, saying that their squad has been the strongest in the area for many years. He also states that they encountered resistance from the elves and another villain who brutally beat them. He also tells about what happened to Jenna and demands to protect the dignity of the Thieves Guild. The leader of the Bandits Guild, Orcus, says that they had to act professionally to avoid this. Jenna says that this man turned out to be a much more serious opponent than they expected. She also reveals that he not only hit them, but also took all their equipment to disgrace them. Finally, she declares that this man has seen her entire body, and if he does not die, she will be disgraced for the rest of her life. Orcus suddenly rises up on his elbows, realizing that such insults truly cannot be tolerated. He reflects on how Jenna is the only hottie in their gang, and he's never seen her naked. Jenna, meanwhile, says that this insignificant scoundrel has now gone to the elves and has probably already reached the village. Orcus realizes that this was his dream, as he always wanted to meet the elves and enjoy their beauty. Without thinking twice, he jumps down, causing a small earthquake with his superhero landing. He states that he has already made the main decision, and now this scoundrel must be destroyed for what he did. After some time, we return to the elven village, where tense negotiations are still taking place. Aurora runs towards her queen's chambers, where she is right now with Chester. She opens the door and says that a large number of intruders are heading here, which means that something is wrong. She also says that they almost reached the village, but suddenly stops when she sees something very strange. Chester turns towards her and tries to understand how she opened the door so abruptly. Aurora immediately bows her head and says that she did not want to interrupt their very important negotiations. Lovey tries to stop her, saying that she is just testing how strong this person really is, and this is just an exchange of experience. Meanwhile, the robbers walk through the gloomy forest, saying that everyone must be on guard and keep their eyes open. Orcus adds that they came here to avenge Jenna's shame and not to be swayed by the elves' beauty. However, after some time, they see a trio of elves patrolling the area, armed with simple weapons. These girls look at them carefully and say that if the violators take one more step, they will die. Orcus suddenly loses control of himself and says that these elves really live up to their name. He immediately tells the others that they need to be taken apart so that they can be brutally tortured. Jenna feels that there is not much sincerity in these words, as if he came here for something completely different. The bandits immediately rush forward, joyfully saying that they will be able to deal with these elves and take them for themselves. However, a few moments later, the queen arrives at this makeshift arena and orders them to stop. She uses the Moonrise skill, calling the bandits pathetic creatures who encroached on the sacred borders of the elves. This blow is enough to incapacitate several bandits who were not careful. Lovey looks at them with irritation and says that such arrogant violators must be destroyed on the spot. Orcus looks closely at the ruler of the elves and realizes that she looks incredibly attractive. Lovey, in turn, says that if they decide to retreat right now, she guarantees that she will not kill them. Orcus, meanwhile, is thinking that even this girl's curses sound excellent, and he has always dreamed of such an elf. Chester comes closer and says that he sees several familiar faces and asks why they came here. He smiles and assumes that they decided to bring him even more equipment after their last defeat. Orcus immediately realizes that this man is the cause of Jenna's shame. He says that he did what he wanted to do first and cannot accept such injustice. After this, he prepares for battle and declares that he will smash him to smithereens to show who is the boss here. Lovey immediately enters the fight, which hasn't even started yet, and lands a powerful kick right to his face. Orcus jumps back, realizing that this girl is very strong, and noting that he didn't think that elves were so powerful. Chester says the intervention was unnecessary because he was in control of the situation. Lovey says that he is the man the elf queen is in love with, and she cannot allow him to be attacked. She happily says that such power cannot be used in a battle with some scum like this scoundrel. She casts a greedy glance in his direction and says that such power could be used for something more worthy. Chester and Betty realize that they are in serious trouble because now this girl will be chasing them too. Orcus reflects that he is a wild and ferocious man who will not flinch before her, but she has fallen in love with this idiot. Lovey says that one man is enough for the elven village and calls on the elven warriors to fight seriously. The elven girls, along with Aurora, let out a battle cry and close the distance between their opponents. Orcus says that if these elves are so heartless, then he will not show them any mercy. He gives orders to his bandits to take as many elves as possible into cages for subsequent sale. However, these bandits prove to be too weak fighters to withstand the powerful fencing skills. Jenna relies on her magic and, thanks to this, neutralizes several warriors. Aurora immediately comes to the defense of her sisters, preparing to attack with butterfly magic and other spells. Lovey says that it's all because Orcus invaded here and interrupted their wonderful negotiation process. She also accuses him of ruining the real pleasure at the most important moment. Orcus says that she just needs a man who can truly satisfy her. Lovey rejects his offer, saying that they must get rid of him as soon as possible. After that, she decides to use her ultimate skill to wipe him off the face of the earth in the blink of an eye. Orcus says that she must be joking if she thinks he could die from such a pathetic attack. After this, he puts his hands forward to withstand this incredible onslaught, and he even succeeds. However, it cannot be said that this comes very easily to him, but he still withstands this incredible, energetic onslaught. She says that they are both at the same level, and it is still unclear which of them will emerge victorious. Lovey tells him that blind confidence is not a good thing, and therefore his victory is not guaranteed. Orcus takes a few steps towards her, saying that now he will show her his wild blows filled with power. He feints a few times as if he were about to make a dash, but after a few moments, he delivers a powerful kick. This kick raises a huge number of stones, which rush towards Lovey, but suddenly stop in place. Orcus decides to take advantage of the short pause to strike these stones and send the fragments forward. Lovey says that this skill is very high level, but it will not work against her. Immediately after this, she activates a magical seal to rain down fire projectiles onto the rocks. Each projectile easily finds its target or quickly destroys it, preventing it from hitting Lovey. Orcus rushes forward, realizing that all mages have an Achilles heel, as they are very poor in close combat. He notes that the attack was simply a distraction to get closer to her when she was defenseless. After this, he gets to her using an improvised smokescreen and prepares to strike. This melee skill is called Boar Break, and it really does feel like you're being rammed by a boar. Orcus easily lands a powerful blow straight to Lovey's body and begins to celebrate his victory. However, the next second she smiles and says that he has fallen into the most obvious trap of all possible. Within moments, her body turns into a bandaged doll that served as bait. Orcus looks at the result of his actions in surprise, and she asks him if he really thought that he would succeed. She notes that not all magic is capable of close combat, but it is an important exception. Having chosen a suitable position, she decides to use the skill Dance of the Sacred Moon Wheel. Orcus doesn't have time to react to this attack and finds himself in the very epicenter of a powerful blow that crumbles the earth. Orcus feels the full power of elven magic and realizes that his bones are gradually beginning to crumble. Lovey says that they are both at the highest level, but even here, there is a gradation between the strong and the weak. Coming closer to him, she says that he has only just reached the highest level, but she has been there for a long time. She also states that she has long since mastered all the subtleties of this level, so he is not her equal. Lovey turns to the other hunters and says that she has already defeated their leader, so they have no reason to fight. She also says that they have 5 seconds to disappear because she doesn't have time to waste on them. She also states that if they prevent her from spending time with Chester, then none of them will return home alive. The bandits also turn around and run away, realizing that there is no point in continuing the fight without a leader. Lovey watches them go and then realizes that they probably won't be returning there anytime soon. The forest gradually becomes clearer and cleaner, marking the end of the unpleasant battle with the pathetic bandits. Lovey says that it looks like some of their girls are injured, so they need to heal them with magic. Aurora declares that she will immediately accept this task and immediately summons the special spirits of this forest. The warriors say that it was wonderful, and her body felt like a feather for a moment. Another girl says that she feels as if there is a constant flow of warmth inside her, and the pain is gone forever. Meanwhile, Lovey turns to Chester, but he is no longer around, as he has decided to do something very important. Lovey is not privy to these plans, so one is still left wondering where he disappeared to and why he didn't warn her. Orcus and the other bandits say that they were truly unlucky as they ran into a strong enemy. One of the bandits says that there is no need to lose heart, since they have at least figured out the route to the elven village. He also says that the new slaves from their camp have not yet left, so they will be able to get money for selling them. Orcus also says that with this money, you can hire several fighters of the maximum level or even higher. He notes that in this way, they will be able to capture the elven village and force them all to bow their heads before them. Chester suddenly appears out of nowhere and says that a thief always remains a thief and does not change his habits. He points out that the queen gave them a chance, but they still have the nerve to think about such shameful things. He also says that they came here to take revenge on him, so he can't just stand and watch. Orcus asks him how he dares to act so arrogantly in front of him when that very queen is not around. After this, he rushes straight at him, saying that he was his prey all along and will not let him go. Chester slaps him, saying that pretending to be tough is only possible if you're actually strong. The blow is incredibly powerful, but Orcus plants his stance into the ground and thus maintains his balance. He makes a sharp turn and notes that Chester is indeed very strong, and his victory is no accident. Nevertheless, he frantically tries to understand what he should do to win this difficult battle. In a fit of desperation, he declares that he will show off his best moves, considering himself the strongest man in these wild places. Moments later, Chester delivers a powerful blow with his sword and declares that he is too weak and will therefore die. Orcus feels incredible pain that pierces his entire body and tries to understand how this is even possible. The other bandits look at him, not hiding their horror because their master has just been killed. Chester states that they are all just cockroaches and should all attack him at once. Before they can even move, he thrusts his sword forward to give them no chance. The sword changes its trajectory every second, and at the same time, it delivers powerful, fatal blows to the necks of these scoundrels. None of them had a chance from the very first seconds they saw him. He was just playing with them. Chester quickly gets the sword back in his hands and realizes that he doesn't have much time left to finish here. He turns to his companion and declares that they need to go to the camp of these thieves to take the treasure. He also says that, among other things, they will of course free the prisoners who are there, but money will be the primary consideration. Meanwhile, Jenna is traveling through the forest, simply not understanding where the rest of the group went, sensing a strange presence. After a few moments, multiple tentacles appear next to her, moving too quickly. Jenna wonders what it is, but it is too late for her to try to save herself. This time, she came across a monster with tentacles, and this enemy is much stronger than it seems at first glance. Jenna wonders how such a monster could appear in this place, emphasizing that she feels uneasy. The monster grins at her with his disgusting face and smiles, saying that she looks incredibly tasty and nutritious. Jenna desperately tries to resist, but is unable to do so due to the constant weakening poison. After a few moments, she feels that her body has stopped moving, and she can only watch what is happening. Meanwhile, the monster happily says that he has finally managed to knock his victim unconscious. After that, he opens his giant mouth and says that she is incredibly appetizing, so he eats her right away. After he finishes his gruesome, bloody meal, he comments on how incredibly nutritious it was. After a few more moments, he begins to glow, starting a transformation process in order to camouflage himself. He partially replicates Jenna's body and takes the name Rafe, saying that this body looks pretty good. Lovey watches a strange flash of light that occurred several dozen meters away from her. She tries to figure out what it could be, and strange visions of Chester being in trouble appear in her head. After that, she smiles and says that they need to go there to save him from an incredible mess. Aurora says that he better prepare himself, as these monsters are quite insidious and powerful. Lovey says that this is indeed the case, since she is going to save her man. Other warriors say that this is indeed the case, since nothing should happen to this man. Gradually, they gather an expedition and rush forward, constantly looking back and listening. And yet, despite their incredible efforts, they still fail to find the very man they are looking for. Lovey is leading this expedition and says that if he doesn't show up for a long time, she will start to worry. Afterwards, she smiles and says that the experience exchange procedure was incredibly important for her and she wants to repeat it. However, with her screams, she attracts the attention of only the monsters that are already lurking behind. After a few moments, they begin to sharply stretch their tentacles towards her in order to take advantage of the element of surprise. Lovey definitely looks at her hands, and her body is wrapped in slimy, disgusting tentacles. The monsters that trapped her happily say that she has finally been caught. Many of them immediately recognize her as the Elf Queen and understand that if they eat her, they will receive new ranks. Lovey says that if they want to defeat the Queen with such small blades, then they have a lot of confidence. At that very second, a very sharp and prickly energy begins to pulsate through these thumbs. This energy turns out to be an excellent method for dealing with annoying monsters that don't like electricity. Lovey deftly turns around and realizes that all the monsters that attacked her have died. She also says that these freaks are too weak, so they can't do anything against her. Meanwhile, the other warriors find themselves in a serious situation because they lack strength. Some of them don't have time to dodge such a large number of attacks and fall into tentacle traps. They also understand that once these tentacles are formed, it will be much more difficult for them to break free. Aurora also finds herself in a very awkward position due to her clumsiness, and now their lives are in danger. The elves question how this happened at all and suggest that they acted too hastily. The mimics say that resistance will be futile and that they will soon return to the village to capture it. Smiling, they say that in this case, the elves will become their livestock and part of the mimic culture. One of them is already dreamily imagining the image of one of the elves, demonstrating their future. However, after a few seconds, the queen attacks the overly carried-away mimic and instantly kills him. His comrade looks at the pathetic scraps in surprise and tries to understand how he did not notice the queen's approach. Lovey says that they haven't yet settled old scores for capturing the Fountain of Life, and now they're already targeting their village. The monsters immediately try to leave through negotiations, saying that they are ready to simply surrender. Lovey coldly notes that such techniques will not work on her and she will definitely punish them for such meanness. The very next second, a giant lightning bolt falls from the sky, hitting the monsters directly. No living creature on the planet, except the most powerful monsters and demons, can survive such an attack. After some time, the clouds disperse again, giving the queen the opportunity to recharge the skill. Aurora apologizes to her, saying that they only slow her down and have become a burden to her. Lovey says that this is not true, since she is the queen of the elves, and it is her duty to protect them. After this, she immediately reflects on how she feels like Chester is more important to her than anything else in the world. Her thoughts about balancing her responsibility for the kingdom with her feelings for Chester are interrupted by the arrival of Rafe. Rafe says that it is no longer surprising why his people were killed so easily, since the Elf Queen is to blame for this. He also notes that they showed great enthusiasm, emphasizing that this is apparently the elven approach. Lovey says that she thought Chester was fighting Wraith because of the energy fluctuations, but it turned out to be much simpler. After this, she flies into the air and says that monsters should watch their words when speaking to the queen. She also states that if she gets angry, she will turn them into fried octopus and just eat them. Immediately after this, she unleashes a gigantic stream of energy on him that could wipe him off the face of the earth. Rafe, realizing that mistakes cannot be allowed, makes the most correct and rational decision. The first thing he does is try to defend himself from this powerful blow and create a protective sphere of tentacles. Moments later, pure energy hits him, dealing massive amounts of damage. As the smoke clears, it becomes clear that his protective sphere had miraculously held the blow. Rafe says it was a powerful blowback and that it was very painful for him. He also says that if it weren't for regeneration, he would be in trouble, but now he will have to try hard to win. Lovey calls him a lower organism that understands nothing about love and other higher feelings. Rafe claims that love is for weaklings, as mimics only need information about the victim's weaknesses. After a short pause, he releases a huge amount of strange slime towards his opponents. Lovey looks at this green slime in surprise and asks if this is really his only trump card. Rafe says that underestimating the enemy will come at a cost, as this is no ordinary slime, but a trap designed against them. Smiling, he says that this slime dissolves their clothes and should lead him to victory. Lovey looks down at her stockings and realizes they are dissolving, noting that her opponent's technique is extremely unpleasant. However, she feels sorry that Chester can't see her properly in this state now. Rafe says that they will become so ashamed that they will blush and shake and will not be able to fight. In Rafe's view, no woman could be so shameless as to fight in such a state. After this, he begins to avoid even more acidity of the mucus so that it gets on all the warriors. From his decidedly masculine point of view, the loss of clothing among female warriors is indeed a very important factor. However, in the meantime, a rain of mucus is actually erupting onto this area, which, in addition to its dubious properties, also slows down movement. Aurora says with irritation that this sticky substance is becoming more and more abundant, and gradually the clothes are also being eaten away. Some warriors who have not yet experienced the fate of battle wonder how one can fight in such conditions. Rafe, meanwhile, says he's trying his luck, but now he's found the right spot to hit. Looking at the other warriors, he says that the existence of elves will become a legend today. Without thinking twice, he quickly takes aim and releases a huge stream of spikes straight towards the innocent elves. Aurora looks at the approaching attack in fear and realizes that these spikes are almost impossible to dodge. They also wonder how it is even possible to resist something so disgusting. However, Wraith is clearly not an opponent that even a queen capable of fighting under such circumstances can handle. She uses a sacred light dance skill called Moonwheel to attack. Aurora looks at her sister with admiration and realizes that this is exactly what the real elf queen looks like. Rafe can't believe his brilliant theory was wrong because Lovey is still resisting. He understands that this is a race of naive and extremely shy creatures who would definitely not be able to withstand this attack. Lovey says that such tactics could have caused her at least some inconvenience in the past. She speaks happily of how she has risen above her weight now that she has had an in-depth academic exchange with Chester. After this, she begins to describe in detail the experience she had with Chester, even though no one asked her to. The elves who begin to listen to this amazing story find themselves even more embarrassed than if they had been doused with slime. However, Rafe is also very surprised by such frankness and says that it is better to keep such shameful things silent. In a fit of anger, he tries to destroy the source of awkwardness and says that she is a disgrace to the elven race. He also says that if she liked being beaten so much, then he will make her happy. Lovey watches intently as tentacles suddenly burst out of the ground and surround her, preventing her from escaping. This time, these tentacles are reinforced with demonic power, which makes them much stronger. Lovey is not impressed even by such enhancements and calmly cuts through the powerful tentacles with one easy movement. These strong tentacles turn out to be not so serious, considering the Queen's amazing enthusiasm. She adds that if he wants to match Chester with such a flimsy attack, he doesn't stand a chance. Smiling, she says that only Chester can please the Queen and has sufficient physical qualities. Rafe realizes that he has driven himself into a serious trap from which it will be difficult to escape. However, he could never have imagined that any man could impress the Elven Queen so much. The other Elven girls wonder how inspiring it can be to touch Chester. Lovey says that these tricks will not work on her and emphasizes that now she cannot hold back her power. She notes that today she will put an end to their clan of freaks and finally free the source of life from their influence. Immediately after this, she resolutely runs towards him to end this battle. Rafe understands that he is a level 5 beast, but she laughs, looking down on him. He decides to use the ink cloud creation skill to create a smoke screen. Lovey immediately rushes forward, delivering successive side-to-side strikes to catch the bastard. She asks him if he really wants to run away and states that she will not let him go far. She notices that she has caused him serious damage with this blow, so she tries to find him by the scent of blood. Her fighting spirit is unbreakable as she is determined to put an end to this long battle once and for all. Meanwhile, we are transported to the other side of the wild bandits' camp, which is significantly empty. Chester calmly makes his way inside and cuts through the bars with one deft stroke of his blade. The unhappy girls look at him and ask if they have a new master yet, asking him not to beat them. One of them says that they are sold to a maid shop for fun and used as a tool for making money. They also claim that they are also given to princes or chieftains to use as toys, and they note that if the owner wants to keep them nearby and gradually change them to suit his tastes, then this is also possible. Betty understands that these women have gone through real torture to become like this. She assumes that these slaves are worth a lot of money and hopes that he will not sell them for money. Chester calmly says that now they have complete freedom and can go home quickly. The girls look at him in surprise and ask if he is really letting them go free and if he is joking. Chester says that he loves money very much, but he will not take it if it is earned in this way. The girls say that from today on, he is their new master and they will never forget his true kindness. After he takes all the money from a gang of robbers, Chester doesn't feel much satisfaction because there isn't much there. Betty asks him where he is looking, suggesting that he has forgotten something important, and Chester states that he has thought of something. He tells her that such a huge camp is simply idle, and this is very wasteful, and therefore it needs to be fixed. With a sincere smile, he offers her to take over this camp and then sell it for money. Using his powerful sword strikes, he simply cuts away the earth that holds the camp and lifts it into the air. Immediately after this, he decides to use his mirror to absorb this earth inside. Chester adds that this is a great idea because he will be able to change the camp to suit his needs in the future. Meanwhile, the chase for the tentacle monster turns out to be longer than the Elf Queen expected. Lovey lands near the shore and looks around carefully for a potential enemy. She tells him that desecrating the source of life is unforgivable and orders him to leave immediately. She proudly declares that today is his last day on this earth, as she will not give him a chance to be saved. Rafe says that this magic works on any creature, so their tribe will take this place at any cost. Lovey calls them pathetic creatures who watched them for a long time before attacking the source of life. Rafe says that with the help of the Fountain of Life, his allies will be able to grow and they will become the greatest clan of demons. Rafe also states that the elves have such treasures, but they do not know how to use them, and it is wasteful. Lovey says that this is a sacred relic, thanks to which the elves appeared here several thousand years ago. She calls him a superficial, vulgar creature who will never have the opportunity to use this source. Rafe says that he is not an elf, so their beliefs do not concern him, and he will simply take what is his. He orders the tentacles to come out and tear this arrogant woman apart right before his eyes. After a while, the water begins to boil rapidly, foreshadowing the appearance of new monsters. A few moments later, a multitude of purple creatures emerge from under the water, preparing to attack. These monsters were born only a few minutes ago, but already possess basic attack instincts. Their tactic is to take advantage of their numerical superiority and surround her with many tentacles. Lovey creates a protective barrier imbued with the light of the moon, and it turns out to be quite a strong barrier. Numerous tentacles try to break through, but they are unable to do so despite all their efforts. Rafe says that any barriers will be useless against him since he will not last long. Lovey says that this barrier is not only meant for protection, but is also an aggressive spell. After this, she decides to supplement this ability with new powers, declaring that today she will definitely finish him off. After a few moments, a portal opens at the bottom, from which new streams of energy pour down. Rafe looks at this procedure in surprise and tries to understand what this huge magical formation is and what its essence is. Aurora detects the spell from afar and realizes that her dear sister will finally be able to unleash her full power. Chester realizes that the Elf Queen is apparently fighting the monster while he's away, and that's not the best situation. Lovey says that if magic isn't cruel enough, it's pointless, and she's the only elf here. She also says that she can do whatever she wants with impunity, and now her desire is to destroy the Wraith. After this, she creates a powerful flash, which immediately rushes towards the hated monster. Rafe looks at the approaching projectile and understands that he needs to act quickly and use the maximum opportunity. He shouts loudly that he is not afraid of such things and creates tentacles, claiming that he will be able to block them. However, it quickly becomes clear that these tentacles are too weak to withstand the blow. Rafe finally says that they could come to an agreement and solve this problem with words instead of fighting. At that very moment, his entire body is consumed by a powerful explosion, and the area is covered in thick, high-temperature smoke. Lovey stays alive and well, thanks to a protective barrier that also filters the air. Aurora reflects that Moon's sorrow is one of the most destructive of the elves' magics, but it also overloads the mind's power. Aurora hopes that this skill was enough to destroy the monster and notes that Lovey is now exhausted. Meanwhile, ashlights left over from the organic parts of the monster begin to swirl over the area. A large chunk of land is also destroyed by incredible magic that passes through the area like a meteorite. Lovey says in a tired voice that she promised this monster to finish him off and kept her word. She slowly descends, adding that today she won the victory and the elves overcame the difficulties. However, before she falls to the ground, the hero manages to grab her and asks if everything is okay. Chester also tells her that she is a great girl because she could single-handedly destroy the lair of tentacle monsters. Lovey says that if she had not had a deep exchange of experiences, she would not have been able to overcome her boundaries. Betty quickly runs up to them and freezes in place as she finds them in a very specific pose. She asks them if they need to be in that position to talk normally. Lovey says that she doesn't see anything wrong with this since her body is exhausted and she can't move. After this, she turns around and says that she needs to hug her beloved in order to recover. Chester looks at her in surprise and she sharply asks him how he feels right now. Chester begins to feel embarrassed and says that he doesn't feel so bad. Lovey happily declares that as soon as she defeated this monster, he appeared, and this is probably a sign from above. She also states that if she doesn't hold on to him after this prophecy, it will be wrong. Betty immediately questions what they are doing, noting that Chester is actually hers alone. Aurora runs forward and says that she has come to save them from a serious problem. However, after a few moments, she sees something that her young eyes should not have seen at that age. She realizes that she is a little late and now feels incredibly awkward. Gradually, the source of life, which is still bubbling, begins to pulsate brightly, showing that they are not finished yet. A few moments later, a giant stream bursts out from there, ready to destroy everything in its path. Rafe takes on his true form and says that the damned elves are celebrating too soon because this is not the end yet. He adds that this spell was supposed to exhaust her, but now he, in turn, will destroy everything in his path. He also calls the elf tribe pathetic ants, which he will deal with without any problems. Betty and Aurora realize that this is a 6th-level creature, meaning it is the real tentacle host hiding inside. Lovey had been looking into Chester's eyes the whole time, but her sharp ears notice the appearance of such a monstrous monster. She turns around irritably and says that someone is always preventing her from having a normal time. After this, she takes a few steps to the side and says that the queen did not receive the award and is now angry. Chester gestures for her to move no further, as he will take this fight upon himself. He also states that she must be tired, so he can take care of this monster with incredible ease. She notes that this confession feels simply wonderful, which means he is definitely in love with her. Chester doesn't quite understand why she starts twitching strangely and assumes that she is just acting strange. Rafe says that a level 6 monster can't stand it when someone behaves like that in his presence. After this, he turns to the main character and says that the pathetic worm does not dare to fight with him. He considers him unworthy and adds that showing such disrespect is unacceptable. However, after a few moments, his attack is completely blocked, despite all the force applied. Chester looks calmly at his opponent, who was unable to break through his defense. The next second, he unleashes a lightning attack that cuts those tentacles into tiny pieces. After a few more moments, the force of the wind turns these tentacles into pitiful dust that flies through the air. Chester says he doesn't care about this monster, and that's why he doesn't take him seriously. The giant monster feels incredible waves of pain that pass through his body and destroy him from the inside. Lovey, in turn, notes that this blow was so fast that she didn't even have time to notice anything. Lovey, in turn, notes that this is indeed the very person she was looking for and that the spectacle is amazing. Chester says that this fountain of life contains the treasure he seeks and that the monster is stopping him. After this, he decides to use his ultimate skill, creating many shining dots in the sky that gradually get closer. The monsters look up to see what those strange dots are, and they don't like what they see. These dots turn out to be giant projectiles that are flying straight towards him. Rafe says that it is a very weak spell, and he is not afraid of it at all, after which he tries to block it. However, these projectiles are so sharp and fast that they cut through his tentacles in the blink of an eye. This monster doesn't have a single chance to survive such a powerful hit. Rafe is trying to figure out how this happened and why his body was so badly damaged. He adds that his regenerative abilities are unmatched and that as long as he breathes, he can come back to life. Chester quickly closes the distance between himself and his opponent, preparing to deliver the finishing blow. He finally declares that any evil demons must be destroyed without pity or remorse. Rafe realizes that he is unlikely to survive the next attack and asks to wait a little, promising the opportunity to negotiate. Chester, meanwhile, declares that he is not interested in negotiating with such monsters and is preparing another attack. After this, he creates several energy spheres and sends them forward. Rafe says that such small energy balls will definitely not kill him since they are only measly pellets. He assumes that as long as at least one part of his body remains, he will be able to survive and get out. After a few moments, he realizes that these small spheres of energy are far from harmless. Once they reach their target, they form into huge explosions, creating an even more powerful destructive force. Each of these explosions begins to duplicate itself and leaves the monster no chance to survive. Lovey watches this and notes that it is an incredibly powerful technique that she really doesn't like. Aurora also says that this person is too strong because even a 6th level magical monster turned out to be too weak. Meanwhile, only pitiful remnants remain of the giant monster, which gradually turn to dust. Also, after a series of powerful explosions, it becomes clear that this holy spring has finally been cleansed of filth. The water becomes so clear that it begins to resemble a mirror, and the elven people receive a chance for a new revival. Lovey muses that if Chester shared even a little of that raging energy with her, it would be great. Chester, meanwhile, descends to the source of life and carefully looks into the depths of the reservoir. A genuine smile spreads across his face, and he says that it's time to get to know each other properly. All this time, he turned to the treasure, which was hidden in the depths of the reservoir, and awaited the arrival of its savior. After a while, a small red sphere emerges from the water and hovers at the hero's eye level. This sphere says that it thought that it would never be awakened from its long sleep. Immediately after this, she reaches for his body, saying that they can finally become one. Chester feels his body fill with a huge amount of energy and feels his strength increase many times over. The voice tells him that this treasure is called the Giant Sun Spirit and can provide endless stamina. This artifact also radiates incredible attraction to the opposite sex for some reason. Chester, in turn, reflects that there was too much energy and now he needs to put it somewhere. After some thought, he decides that he is about to make a breakthrough, so he needs to find a way to release the energy. He notes that the Sun Spirit is incredibly unusual, as he has never seen such buffs from treasures. Turning around, he remembers the words that this treasure gives an irresistible attraction to the opposite sex. Betty looks at him lovingly and says that she is very happy that she was able to help him get this treasure. Aurora also says that this is an amazing fate and wonders how she can help him in the future. Chester suggests that their admiration for him is due to the aura of the two suns affecting them. After this, she turns her attention to the queen, but quickly realizes that she has disappeared somewhere. Chester looks around and reflects on how she is the most sensitive of the three. He immediately understands that, given her sensitivity, the influence of the Sun Spirit on her will be extremely strong. His fears are fully justified, as Lovey simply falls to the ground, unable to withstand such pressure. Chester quickly approaches the girls, feeling that the aura of the sun spirit is beginning to affect them more and more strongly. Aurora and Betty ask him if his actions are too hasty, considering he came to them immediately after the battle. Aurora states that he is the hero of the village, so she should pay him as he wishes. Betty also says that they have been together for so long that he knows exactly how she feels. Chester looks closely at these girls and realizes that he doesn't really feel anything, but he has to take responsibility. After clearing his throat, he says that he understands their desire perfectly and that it is possible to satisfy their request. After this, he points his finger at one specific person, saying that he needs to be dealt with first. Betty and Aurora turn around to see who exactly they are talking about, although it is already obvious. The spirit of the sun says that Lovey needs him now more than ever because her energy is too explosive. Chester realizes that at this moment he is the only person who can save her. Chester says that if she hadn't met him, she definitely wouldn't have become like this, so there's no point in blaming her for her actions. He slowly takes off his clothes and says that this is his responsibility, which a man cannot refuse. Within moments, he is completely naked, not caring how it looks from Betty and Aurora's perspective. Meanwhile, Lovey gradually comes to her senses and looks around, feeling a strong tremor in her body. Chester comes closer to her and says that this is not the most convenient place to solve the problem. After a few more moments, he decides to use the mirror to transfer everything to another dimension. Lovey looks around and tries to understand whether this is really paradise on Earth, which she has never been to before. Chester says she has come to her senses a little, adding that she is in a dangerous state and needs help. Lovey looks at him and asks if he really came to save her life. Smiling, she states that if he came to reward her, she will not be polite. Betty and Aurora look into the portal and think about what the two of them are doing there, not understanding what is happening. A few more seconds pass, after which shreds of clothing that the queen was wearing fly out of the portal. Aurora takes a few frightened steps, trying to understand what kind of strange creature it was that jumped on her. However, after a few moments, she takes off the thing and realizes that these are her sister's black stockings. Aurora says that black stockings are far from the only thing that flew out of this portal. She picks up the queen's dress and says that it too ended up here for some completely incomprehensible reason. Betty and Aurora realize that they have been in this space for a long time and begin to feel jealous. Betty recalls that she kissed him several times to absorb spiritual power, but never went further. After this, he decides to get down to business and says that she can't just sit here and wait. Aurora looks anxiously into the portal and realizes that she is the only one still standing. She wonders what she should do and notes that she wants to be in that place too, but she is ashamed. After a while, she hears strange sounds made by people in this portal and trembles a little. She realizes she's never felt this nervous before, so she has to pull herself together and take a risk. After some time, she finds herself in another world and says that she didn't think there was such a big space here. She realizes she must find them and explore them, as the queen did, to thank Chester. After some time, she begins to feel that the aura is becoming stronger and slowly approaching. She stops abruptly and wonders if she can interrupt their fun. Chester suddenly appears in front of her and tells her that this is not the right place if she is scared. He adds that he opened this place in order to save her sister and recommends returning before it is too late. Aurora decides to stay and firmly says that she is going to repay him in the same way as her sister and the little fox did. Chester realizes that the powers of the giant sun's essence are so terrifying that he faces a long period of recovery. After some time, dawn comes and a large number of elves arrive here in search of their queen. They wonder what has already happened here, noting that the source of life has finally become what it was before. They also discover a portal, trying to figure out what this strange passage is, and note that they haven't met Chester and Lovey yet. They assume that it might be a passage between worlds, and so they decide to look inside to find out what is going on. One of the girls turns out to be the most determined and says that she must find out what is going on there. She motivates her determination by the fact that yesterday she only interfered with the queen, so the time has come to repay the debt. Looking into the portal, she hopes that the queen is okay, adding that without the queen, the elves are doomed. However, suddenly she loses her fighting spirit as she sees something her eyes were not supposed to see. The other warriors ask her what is going on there, but she does not immediately give them a clear answer. After a while, she jumps to the side and says that she saw something incredibly amazing. They ask her what kind of heavenly world this is and where the queen and princess, whom they haven't seen for a long time, have gone. The girl says that there is a queen and a princess inside, as well as a very handsome man. After some time, the portal opens and the queen comes out, saying that she is very tired. She notes that her whole body hurts, but these sensations are a consequence of the efforts expended. Aurora says she feels like her back is going to break, but she's definitely happy it turned out that way. She also notes that she will be able to preserve precious memories of this evening. Chester also emerges from the portal and listens to another round of compliments from Betty, noting that she cannot walk. Smiling, she says that this is not an exaggeration, since she is very sensitive. Chester looks at her and tries to understand what this fox's true intention is. Lovey says that she only has a few minutes left, after which he will carry her. The elves run up to the queen and say that the monster has been destroyed and that they have even found the very man they were looking for. They also note that something has changed significantly in him, as if he has become much more handsome. Chester glances carefully at their faces, realizing that the sun god's power has not yet dissipated. Girls also react and say that this man is incredibly attractive, and they are very excited from just one look at him. However, after some time it turns out that the consequences of the battle with the monster are not as positive as it seemed at first. One of the elves comes to her queen and says that they have lost the blessing of the source of life. Lovey looks closely at the water and says that it has indeed lost its effect. Lovey says that if they don't have the blessing of the fountain of life, then it's very bad news. Smiling, she says that this could mean the emergence of an important task of reproducing their clan. Chester understands that this is a very specific task on which he is not prepared to spend such a huge amount of time. Betty looks at these elves in surprise and asks if they really want to entrust him with the task of continuing the family line. Betty warns them that at this rate he will simply lose his stamina and die. Lovey says that elves are incredibly charming, so he definitely won't regret it if he agrees. She emphasizes that their entire tribe needs his presence, and she especially needs it. Chester says that he wouldn't mind, but he's very busy right now because he has an important mission. Betty states that he can't stay here forever and help create little elves, as he won't have the strength. Lovey says that her destiny cannot end here, since she has already even come up with a name for their child. Chester thinks for a moment and realizes he has a more logical way out of this situation. He speaks publicly about how he has an amazing way to restore the source of life. This news is incredibly impressive, and all the other elves immediately freeze upon hearing it. Lovey asks him if he is hinting that they both need to go into that spring to bathe. She suggests that they can use powerful energy to revive the spirits within. Chester says that everything is much simpler than she thinks and that it can be done completely alone. After this, he states that this ritual requires absolute privacy and asks that no one spy on him. After the area is cleared of prying eyes, Chester realizes that the elves are appearing due to the influence of the spiritual core. They do not understand where they came from, but as a sign of gratitude, they worship and protect the spiritual core. Chester notes that he has taken what is his, but he cannot simply let his line die out. The forest continues to live its life, and Samwine sees. Its standard noise does not disturb anything suspicious. Lovey still decides to follow this ritual to find out what kind of ritual it is. Betty also tries to follow him, trying to understand what method exists to revive the source of life. In their attempts to follow him, they collide with each other, completely unaware of each other's presence. After a while, they ask each other why they are here, and quite quickly understand why they came. They agree to keep what happens a secret, as they are both extremely curious to know what will happen next. After some time, Lovey notices a very important detail that almost immediately attracts her attention. This detail is the main character's clothes, which are lying near the sacred pond. Betty and Lovey wonder what this strange ceremony is that requires stripping naked. Chester, meanwhile, is trying to revive the spiritual energy within himself that will allow him to create a new life. The veins on his face begin to bulge violently as this ritual requires a huge expenditure of energy. He creates a powerful energy dragon that appears next to him and begins to circle from side to side. The aura of this dragon is incredibly terrifying and extends for many tens of meters. Lovey watches this monster and realizes that he has such a strong body that it is impossible not to respect him. Betty notes that as soon as she saw this dragon, her body immediately trembled with surprise. Chester gradually begins to transfer his power to the black dragon so that it can perform the necessary actions. Betty and Lovey realize that after some time, this dragon will explode to complete the ritual. Betty even notes that he is just waiting for this moment to see how life begins. The dragon's red eyes, meanwhile, continue to sparkle as it fills with spiritual energy. After a person's ritual comes to an end, he aims at the sacred source and ejects energy. This point instantly passes through the water and rushes somewhere deep, charging everything with vital force. Gradually, this water begins to oscillate as if a giant tsunami were beginning that nothing could stop. Lovey and Betty sense that the energy source is becoming overflowing and is now growing in size to a veritable sea. The forces concentrated in this source are so great that they will last for billions of years. Chester quickly dresses and approaches them, telling them that their life source has been fully restored. He notes that the blessing should last for a certain period of time and needs to be renewed periodically. Lovey says that thanks to him, the elves survived this disaster and he is their savior. Chester also reminds them that no one is allowed to watch his ritual as it requires privacy. He notes that if he is disturbed, a fine will follow since he will have a very hard time the next day. Betty apologizes and says she was just peeking because she was nervous and didn't realize it was a mistake. Lovey also says that the idea of spying in the forest was hers and she considers herself innocent. She also says that the black dragon was incredibly amazing and she wants him to summon it again. She adds that she made a big mistake and must be severely punished for what she did. Chester looks at her in surprise and tries to understand what her true intentions are, and finally, he understands. He assures that there were too many elves in the looking glass, so they need more attention. After this, he swings his hand back and delivers a sharp slap, and Lovey encourages him to continue. Betty looks at this sudden scene of punishment in surprise and tries to figure out what to do in this situation. However, after the punishment, night comes as everything dragged on for many hours. Chester asks her if she has received enough punishment or if she is still unhappy. Lovey says it was absolutely amazing and agrees to be trained by Chester. Betty asks her why she also got caught in the crossfire if only the elf queens were supposed to be punished. Chester notes that he got carried away and it was a moment of passion that he didn't quite take into account. He also reflects that there was a time when he didn't seem so sensitive, but that's no longer the case. He suggests that perhaps this is because he has finally acquired a part of himself that has given him sensitivity. Lovey whispers gently in his ear and asks if he will leave her in this place, adding that she wants to go with him. He notes that it is impossible to keep her in the village, so she will simply be with them. She begs him with all sincerity to take her with him, no matter what. Chester understands that she speaks from the heart and really wants to go with him. After a short pause, he says that if she has made a decision, she will go with them. Betty asks what will happen to the village if the village queen is left without her leader. Lovey replies that there is no need to worry about that, as there is a candidate who will take her place as queen. She adds that Aurora is not only kind-hearted, but also responsible, making her ideal for the role. Meanwhile, they are transported to another place where there were so many people that their skulls formed the floor. However, now the Demon King comes here, who has been making his way here all this time to get to his enemy. Now he reaches another monster who looks down on him, calling him a pathetic newbie. This creature, the Skeleton King, asks him if he has come to offer his soul. The Demon King says that he did not come here to become his servant and that he got it all wrong. Looking sternly at his opponent, he declares that he came here only to force him to obey him. The Skeleton King asks if he understands who he is speaking to, emphasizing that no living soul dares to say such things. He also states that he is the 8th most powerful monster in this world and is the king of the undead, and the Demon King replies that he knows it. He also adds that if he were not so powerful, he would not have come for him, and offers cooperation. The Skeleton King says that he doesn't seem to understand the situation and advises him to look at the bones. He notes that it was people like him who tried to challenge him, but they ended up in a rather disappointing way. The Skeleton King says that if he doesn't change and swear allegiance to him, the same fate awaits him. A few moments later, giant skeletons begin to emerge from the ground, preparing to attack. The Demon King takes a few steps to the side and activates his wings to gain more maneuverability. Meanwhile, the skeletons form a small squad to pounce on their victim in one fell swoop. The Skeleton King orders the skeletons to destroy this villain to teach him a lesson. The skeletons weakly submit to the will of their master and immediately jump forward, not caring about their own safety. The Demon King lets them get as close as possible to destroy them with one powerful attack. There are so many skeletons that they form a small hill that you can literally slide down. However, the Demon King's energy is so powerful that it can be seen even through thick layers of bone. After the preparatory stage, a powerful explosion occurs, which scatters the bones in different directions and dissolves them. The Demon King says that it's all just a pile of trash that can't harm him. He also adds that he did not come here at all to crush these pathetic skeletons who are good for nothing. He also says that he has one last chance to obey, and the Skeleton King only gets angrier. Gradually, the small heads of the skeletons rise higher and higher, feeding the strength of their king. The Skeleton King says he's been doing this for centuries, and these bones are more than just decoration. He emphasizes that this is the source of his strength, which must be watched very carefully. After this, he decides to take on his ultimate form to greatly enhance his abilities. He asks if he was scared when he saw his true form, and advises him to run away while he can. The Demon King immediately notices the strange pearl that is located on the Skeleton King's chest. He says with a smile that the relic he has been looking for so long is right here, and now he has finally found it. The Skeleton King looks at him in surprise and asks if he was his target all along. After a few moments, he falls to the ground as if the magic had completely stopped working on his body. He lands in a pile of bones with a distinctive thud, but his helplessness does not go away despite his efforts. He notices that his body is out of control and tries to understand what happened to him. The Demon King shows the Demon Cube, saying that it can control the bodies of all demons. He notes that everyone will bow at his feet, and even demonic creatures with intelligence will be no exception.